Chapter 319. In an instant, an yin-yang Tai Chi diagram appeared beside Jiangchen. Under the reverse flow technique, Li Fengzi's fist radiance was completely neutralized. At the same time, his fist was 3 inches away from Li Fengzi's head, but it could not penetrate any further. This was because a pure gold shield appeared above Li Fengzi's head. Dragon scale armor, Jiangchen exclaimed softly. This was a Dao Soul, ranked 18th, and could be upgraded. Moreover, the Dragon Scale Armor Dao Soul was extraordinary. It was a twin Dao Soul. Those who had the Dragon Scale Armor Dao Soul would definitely have the Dragon Scale Reverse Sword Dao Soul. Slash! At this moment, Li Fengzi waved his hand. As Jiangchen expected, the Dragon Scale Reverse Sword Dao Soul appeared in his hand. With a loud shout, a sword radiance erupted, accompanied by the roar of a dragon. Chasing the sky, Jiangchen exclaimed softly as Chasing the Sky appeared in his hand. Then, a fist radiance blasted out and shattered Li Fengzi's sword radiance. Following that, Chasing the Sky slashed down and a sword radiance as white as the moon descended. Clang! Li Fengzi moved sideways. At the same time, the dragon scale armor appeared in front of him and blocked the Chasing the Sky sword. Then, Li Fengzi formed a fist seal with his left hand, and a vast dragon's aura erupted. The dragon's aura gathered and turned into a 5-clawed golden dragon. Then, with the sword radiance of the dragon scale reverse sword in his hand, it charged towards Jiangchen. The dragon sword was supported by the imperial dragon's aura. It was like a golden thunderbolt accompanied by the roar of a dragon. Its power was boundless. At this moment, Jiangchen and the others looked nervous. They broke out in cold sweat for Jiangchen. They had never seen anyone as strong as Li Fengzi, and they had never seen such a grave look on Jiangchen's face. "I admit that you are strong," Jiangchen said seriously. Beside him, Li Yuan turned into a Tai Chi. He struck across the air and dispersed the imperial dragon's aura on the dragon sword. Then, Jiangchen slashed with his sword. Like the falling moon, the sword radiance of the dragon sword was cut into nothingness. Kill! Kill! In the next moment, Jiangchen and Li Fengzi roared at the same time. One of them held the dragon scale armor in his left hand and the dragon scale reverse sword in his right hand. Jiangchen held the Chasing Heaven sword in his right hand and gathered the light of the sun and moon in his left hand. He pushed out his palm, and the sword light was sharp. Boom! Boom! Then, with a series of explosions, people could only see the light and sword radiance wantonly, but they couldn't see the figures of Jiangchen and Li Fengzi. Their attacks were too excessive, and their movements were as fast as lightning. The two of them continued to exchange blows in the air. After a dozen breaths of time, a dragon's roar erupted, scattering all the light. At this point, everyone saw that Jiangchen was bleeding from the corner of his mouth. He was standing in the air, using Chasing the Sky as a crutch to support himself. His injuries were extremely serious. On the other side, Li Fengzi stood proudly. His aura surged, and there was not a trace of blood on his body. Jiangchen has lost. The genius from the barren state is finally defeated. Everyone was amazed by Li Fengzi's strength and heaved a sigh of relief. To be honest, many people had guessed that Jiangchen had fought against many Heaven Realm geniuses with his venerable realm cultivation and was invincible all the way. At this rate, Jiangchen was very likely to be invincible for the rest of his life. And now, Jiangchen's invincible legend had finally been broken. Boss! Impossible! Boss! Master! At this moment, Jiang Lu and the rest widened their eyes in disbelief. In their hearts, Jiangchen was invincible. How could he be defeated? Only Jiangchen himself was smiling. He put away the Chasing Heaven sword and cupped his hands at Li Fengzi. He smiled meaningfully and said, "The second prince is really powerful. I can afford to lose." However, no one expected Li Fengzi's answer to admit that he had lost. At this moment, everyone was dumbfounded. Second brother? Li Fengyuan was surprised. Looking at the uninjured Li Fengzi, He did not believe that he had lost. However, only Li Fengzi himself knew that he had indeed been defeated in their last exchange. However, for the sake of his dignity, he used his quasi-saint cultivation at the last moment, and it was only in this way that he managed to injure Jiang Chun. If they had fought at the same cultivation level, Li Fengzi would have already lost. Li Fengzi even thought about it, and understood that if he had not used his quasi-sage strength, he would have lost this battle without a doubt. Even if he used his heaven realm strength, it would be very difficult for him to defeat Jiang Chun. The next time we meet, I hope to have a good battle with you, Li Fengzi said proudly. I have lost this battle, but the next battle might not. You have unlimited potential. Jiang Chun smiled and said, finally, I have met a worthy opponent. Listen to my orders. The people of the Zhongzhou dynasty are not allowed to attack Jiang Chun and his group. At this moment, Li Fengzi shouted loudly. His face was upright, and there was a royal aura in his expression. He was a natural king. If he had not been born after the first prince, the next emperor of the Zhongzhou dynasty would definitely be him, and his words were like an imperial edict. At this moment, the people of the Zhongzhou dynasty knelt and nodded in agreement. Second brother, this matter is over, Li Fengyuan said in a deep voice. He was very unhappy. He thought that Li Fengzi clearly had the strength to suppress Jiang Chun and his group, but he insisted on fighting at the same cultivation level because of his so-called pride. Now he had lost. Moreover, after losing, he had actually given such an order. This made Li Fengyuan unable to understand. This matter is not over, Li Fengzi said coldly. He glanced coldly at Li Fengyuan from the corner of his eyes and said, if you do something wrong, you have to take responsibility and bear the consequences. Today, if I were not here, you would have been a corpse. Li Fengyuan's expression suddenly changed when he heard this. He knew that Li Fengzi was going to punish him. However, he did not believe that his second brother could do anything to him. Moreover, Li Fengyuan believed that even if Li Fengzi was not here today, Jiang Chun and his group would not be able to do anything to him. This was because the third prince's strength was not weak. You have no enmity with Jiang Chun and his group, but you sent people to kill the tyrant Wakako and Jianglu. This matter, you were wrong. Li Fengzi said, apologize. Second brother? Why? Li Fengyuan stared. He could not believe that his second brother would punish him in front of so many people. He even wanted him to apologize to Jianglu, Wakako, and the others. He was the third prince of the Zhongzhou dynasty. In the entire Zhongzhou, how many people could accept his apology? If you don't want to, then I will, Li Fengzi said softly. He tidied up his robe, and his expression became serious. He faced Wakako and Jianglu and said solemnly, my younger brother Li Fengyuan has offended you before. I apologize on your behalf. What's the situation? Wakako and Jianglu were dumbfounded. They did not expect Li Fengzi to do this. Even Jiang Chun was surprised. He is a character. Not only is he a king, but he is also an ambitious person. Jiang Chun praised in his heart. He smiled and said, they are not dead. What is there to apologize for? Let's forget about this matter. That's good, Li Fengzi said softly. Then he looked deeply at Jiang Chun and said, the main hall is about to open. You guys better not go in. The battle inside is the most intense and cruel in the desolate god arena. Chapter 320. Those who entered the Desolation God's dojo, no matter how fierce the fights were in other places, their ultimate goal was to enter the main hall. Once, someone had obtained something in the main hall. He didn't know what it was, but after he came out of the Desolation God's dojo, he rose to power and suppressed his peers, eventually dominating the world. Someone had even seen the inheritance of the Desolation God in the main hall, but failed to obtain it. Someone had also obtained a weapon in the main hall of the Desolation God, which was far more powerful than a divine artifact. Someone had speculated that the inheritance in the main hall of the Desolation God might not be passed down. However, the things hidden in it could be obtained by anyone. As long as you were strong enough and had enough opportunities, you could obtain everything. Therefore, After entering the main hall of the Desolation God, everyone would erupt. No matter where the enemy came from or what identity they had, once they competed, they would kill without hesitation. Thank you for your reminder, Jiangchen said softly. But I want to go in and see the world. That's all. Be careful, Li Fengzi said. Buzz. As soon as he finished speaking, the light curtain in front of the main hall suddenly disappeared. Then, the door of the main hall opened automatically. In an instant, everyone's expressions changed, and there were even some that charged out like bolts of lightning towards the entrance of the main hall. Li Fengzi and the others didn't fall behind. A group of Central Plains geniuses, led by Li Fengzi, rushed into the main hall in an instant. The geniuses of Underworld, North Continent, South Continent, and other major continents joined forces and attacked in groups of 3 to 5. Jiangchen didn't move. He stood outside the main hall and looked at Wakako and the others, saying, "Don't go in." "Why?" Wakako frowned. "Is it really dangerous inside?" "Ah!" Before Jiangchen could say anything, a miserable scream was heard. Then, everyone saw Li Fengyuan flying out of the main hall. His body was covered in blood, and there were cracks on his body. He was almost beaten to death. "Have you seen it?" Jiangchen said mockingly. "Do you still want to go in?" No." Wakako shook his head and decided not to go into the main hall. After all, Li Fengyuan was extremely strong and was at the level of a secondary saint. But in the end, he had only gone in for a few breaths of time before he was sent flying out and almost died. Even a secondary sage would find it hard to gain a foothold in the main hall. Wakako, Zhanglu, and the others were only at the heaven realm. If they went in, it would be the same as sending themselves to their deaths. "Master, are you going in?" Bai Fengyu said worriedly. "Why don't we just forget about it? We've already obtained so many Dao seeds in the Desolation God Dao field. It's already a great harvest. There's no need to take the risk. I'm just going in to take a look," Jiang Chun said softly. "If there's nothing else, you can leave the Desolate God's dojo and wait for me outside." After saying that, Jiang Chen's figure dimmed. He used the methods of a dark master and stealthily entered the main palace. The main hall was huge, as big as 3 football fields. Weapons were placed on both sides of the main hall. They were covered with restrictions and formations, and they were even protected by barriers. In the middle of the main hall, there was a fountain that sprayed out spring water that flickered with divine light. It was obviously an extraordinary item, and right above the main hall, there was a dragon throne. On the dragon throne, there was a simple box, and right above the dragon throne, there was a painting, but in this painting, there was only a stalk of grass. In addition, there were some bottles and jars in the main hall. They should be filled with elixirs, and at this moment, those who had entered the main hall were snatching these things. Only the strongest few were standing below the dragon throne, staring at the simple box on the dragon throne. "Is that the Desolate God's inheritance?" someone asked, unsure. "It should be." The 9-Li prince frowned. He stretched out his hand and gently pushed forward, but he was pushed back by an invisible force. Li Fengzi was also among them. He frowned. An imperial draconic chi flickered in his eyes. He held the dragon-scale armor and dragon-scale reverse sword in his hands. Beside them, there were dozens of sky prides who did not move. Not only were they wary of each other, but they were also thinking about how to obtain the box on the dragon throne. Jiang Chun was also beside them. However, he had concealed his aura and figure, so these people did not notice him at all. Moreover, Jiang Chen's gaze did not land on the simple box, but on the painting. The painting was very simple. There was only a stalk of grass. However, because it was too simple, it attracted Jiang Chen's attention. Every item in the main hall of the Desolate God was a rare treasure. How could such a simple painting be placed there for no reason? This painting, let's take it as a souvenir. A young man in white held a folding fan in his hand. With a wave of his hand, he wanted to keep the painting in his hand. However, just as he waved his hand, the stalk of grass in the painting swayed gently. Then, an extremely sharp sword radiance shot out from the painting and sliced the young man in white into powder. Not even a trace of ash was left. Sword intent. Supreme sword intent. At that moment, everyone retreated one after another. They did not dare to get too close to the painting. That was because even a sage could not block the supreme sword intent. Idiot! Can the things here be touched casually? Someone said angrily. If that supreme sword intent was not only targeted at the person who attacked, just a trace of the supreme sword intent's aftershock would be enough to kill everyone in the main hall. Does the enchantment in front of the dragon throne need to be broken by the supreme sword intent? Leafings said in a low voice. They had tried before, but they could not break the enchantment in front of the dragon throne. And now, these people finally realized something. If he wanted to open the enchantment in front of the dragon throne, the key was in that picture scroll. However, how could they control the supreme sword intent? With their strength, it was difficult to even touch it, let alone control it. If I can't control it, then I'll comprehend it. If I can comprehend a trace of the supreme sword intent, I might be able to use it to open the enchantment in front of the dragon throne, Jiangchen thought. Hiding in the dark, a trace of divine consciousness slowly approached the painting. And Jiangchen was not the only one who did this. After all, the people present were not fools. Since they knew that they could not control the supreme sword intent, they would comprehend it. Moreover, if they could comprehend the supreme sword intent, even if they could not get the ancient box, it would be enough. Puff! However, after a few breaths, someone's face suddenly turned pale. That was because when his divine consciousness approached the painting, it was injured by a trace of the supreme sword intent's aura. His entire soul almost collapsed. There was even one person who, because he was not careful enough, his soul directly turned into nothingness, and he died on the spot. Since ancient times, the enchantment here has never been opened. Li Fengzi was very careful. He was also guessing in his heart whether this supreme sword intent could really be comprehended. If he could not comprehend it, what should he do? Since the inheritance was left behind, there must be a way to obtain it. And this way must be in this main hall. A sky pride from the underworld continent said, perhaps the way to obtain the inheritance is not in this painting. It's all just speculation. A sky pride from the eastern continent smiled bitterly. It's just that the supreme sword intent on this painting is too terrifying. If one's divine consciousness gets even a little closer, it might affect one's soul, causing it to collapse in death. How can we comprehend it? Someone's expression was ugly. He felt that there was no way out in front of him. Chapter 321. Everyone was guessing that one needed to comprehend the supreme sword intent to be able to break through the restrictions and array formations on the dragon throne. However, how could this supreme sword intent be something that mortals could comprehend? This level of sword intent was incomparably berserk. The slightest bit of carelessness would damage one's divine soul, or even extinguish one's divine soul entirely, dying one's body and Tao vanishing. And now, a group of the top geniuses from various major states stood in front of the dragon throne with helpless faces, feeling rather helpless towards this supreme sword intent. If the desolate god's inheritance was so easily obtained by others, then this kind of inheritance would have long been common on the streets. Li Fengzi said softly, then sighed. Perhaps the time for the desolate god's inheritance to appear has not yet arrived. Whoever can comprehend the supreme sword intent will be able to obtain the desolate god's inheritance. It didn't take long for almost everyone to know about this. Many people came over, wanting to attempt to comprehend the supreme sword intent. It was just that it was a pity that another dozen or so people were killed by the supreme sword intent, their divine souls extinguished. Myriad transformations. At this moment, Jiang Chun was hiding at the side, a green lamp floating up and down in his eyes, burning with a faint flame. The myriad transformations' heavenly lamp floated up and down. An obscure great Tao aura appeared on Jiang Chen's body. The myriad transformations' heavenly lamp turned everything impossible into possible. Jiang Chen knew that relying on his own strength alone, he definitely could not comprehend the supreme sword intent. Therefore, he could only use the myriad transformations' heavenly lamp. And in the process of using the myriad transformations heavenly lamp, Jiang Qin's body and spirit were focused. Unable to move, his body fused with the myriad transformations heavenly lamp. At this time, if he was discovered by others, Jiang Qin would not even have the strength to resist. Fortunately, Jiang Qin's concealment methods were very profound. Standing in front of the dragon throne, he continuously used the myriad transformations heavenly lamp to comprehend the supreme sword intent and was not discovered by others. At the same time, there was also a youth hiding beside Jiang Qin. Jiang Qin did not discover this person, and this person also did not discover Jiang Qin. Just like this, the two people were practically hidden next to each other, standing together, but neither knew of the other's existence. Half a day later, quite a few people withdrew from the main palace. They more or less obtained some benefits, but there were also some who died here. Li Fengzhe and the other most powerful geniuses didn't leave. They didn't want to give up and were currently using some methods in hopes of comprehending the unparalleled sword intent. Wang! Suddenly, a rumbling sound came out from the main palace. Then, the entire palace began to shake. Sword glows emerged from the scroll and turned into ancient words floating in the air. At the same time, the restrictions and arrays on the dragon throne began to fluctuate. They were like porcelain vases that were cracking. Oh! Someone comprehended the supreme sword intent. At this moment, Li Fengzhe and the others were moved. They cried out in surprise as they scanned the entire palace. However, they did not see anything unusual, nor did they discover who had comprehended the supreme sword intent. At the same time, Jiang Qin's heart was in turmoil. It was all because this supreme sword intent wasn't comprehended by him. This meant that there was another person in this palace who was also comprehending the supreme sword intent, and his speed was even faster than his. You can comprehend the supreme sword intent as you wish, but don't even think about touching the box on the dragon throne. The Ninely Prince said coldly, after comprehending the supreme sword intent, open the restrictions and arrays. Everything else has nothing to do with you. No matter where you are or where you're hiding, if you dare to show yourself and fight with us for the inheritance of the desolate god, you'll definitely die, Li Fengzhe said coldly. The supreme sword intent could only be comprehended by those who were capable. It couldn't be forced. However, no one would give up on the ancient box on the dragon throne. Moreover, everyone could see and guess that once someone completely comprehended the supreme sword intent, the restrictions and arrays on the dragon throne would automatically be unlocked. At that time, this box would be the target of everyone's competition. Only those with profound attainments in the sword Dao would have a chance to comprehend the supreme sword intent. Jiang Qin hid in the dark, frowning and puzzled. He had only comprehended 50% to 60% of the supreme sword intent with the 10,000 transformations heavenly lamp. To be able to make the painting appear, it meant that someone had comprehended 80% to 90% of the supreme sword intent. It was hard for Jiang Qin to imagine who had achieved such a high level of attainment in sword doctrine. I don't need the inheritance of the desolate god, but I must obtain this supreme sword intent, Jiang Qin thought to himself, his eyes flickering like a true dragon slowly awakening. He secretly formed hand seals, set up arrays, and even restrictions. After a dozen breaths, a fog suddenly appeared and enveloped the painting. At this moment, everyone's eyes widened. Light gathered in their eyes, but they couldn't see the grass on the painting. At the same time, a puzzled voice sounded beside Jiang Qin. There! How dare you? How dare you hide beside us? In an instant, Li Fengzhe and the others attacked, suppressing towards the place where Jiang Qin was. Jiang Qin's face was pitch black, and he was even more shocked. Even he didn't know that there was a powerhouse hiding beside him. Everyone, if you attack me, then no one will be able to comprehend this supreme sword intent. At that time, if you can't comprehend the supreme sword intent, who will unlock the restrictions and arrays on this dragon throne for you. At this moment, a youth in a red robe appeared beside Jiang Qin. He was quite handsome, with a pair of sword-like eyebrows, and he held a peach-wood sword in his hand. "You're the one who comprehended the supreme sword intent?" Gilly Prince raised his eyebrows. "How's your comprehension?" "I'm indeed comprehending the supreme sword intent, but I can't completely comprehend it," the red-robed youth said softly. "Someone is secretly interfering and blocking my vision. I can't see that painting clearly, so I can't continue comprehending it." "We haven't interfered," Li Fengzi said coldly. A dragon shadow appeared in his eyes, and his gaze swept across every corner of the main hall. He frowned and said, "Is there someone else hiding here? Who could it be?" "As far as I know, there aren't many particularly powerful dark masters among the geniuses who entered the Desolate Gods dojo this time," Gilly Prince said in a deep voice. "How can an ordinary dark master hide under our noses?" "Could it be Mu Xingyan?" someone guessed. He had a deep impression of Mu Xingyan. After all, he was a dark master with a shadow Dao spirit, and he was very powerful. "It can't be Mu Xingyan. He doesn't have the guts." Another person shook his head. He knew that Mu Xingyan was very careful and wouldn't take such a risk. Could it be him? At this moment, Li Fengzi's expression turned serious. He looked at the door of the main hall and said softly, "Jiang Chun, is it you?" "Mount E technique." Suddenly, a youth formed a seal with his hands, and a mysterious light burst out. The mysterious light gathered in the main hall and turned into a mirror. In an instant, everyone saw Jiang Chun looking at them with a dark face in the mirror. "It's really you, Jiang Chun. Your concealment technique is so profound. You're a dark master?" At this moment, everyone exclaimed and was even more moved. Moreover, someone directly attacked and wanted to suppress Jiang Chun. Chapter 322. Jiang Chun was in a bad mood. He did not expect that someone among these geniuses would know such a secret technique. Under the Mount E technique, Jiang Chun had nowhere to hide. "I'm just here to take a look." Jiang Chun stopped hiding and said with a smile, "Do as you please. Remove the array and restriction on the scroll," the red-robed youth said coldly. "If I can't comprehend the supreme sword intent, the array and restriction on the dragon throne will be unbreakable." "What does that have to do with me?" Jiang Chun shrugged indifferently and said, "I'm not interested in the rage god's inheritance, but I'm interested in the supreme sword intent." "Heh, do you think anyone can comprehend the supreme sword intent?" the red-robed youth said disdainfully. "Only people from the Supreme Sword Sect can comprehend it." Supreme Sword Sect? The Supreme Sword Sect on the North State's Heavenly Mountain? Many people exclaimed, and even Li Fengzi's expression changed. That was because the Supreme Sword Sect was too powerful and had a deep foundation. It was said that there was an expert who was about to become a god in the Supreme Sword Sect. Their foundation was enough to compete with the Middle State Dynasty. Moreover, when talking about the Supreme Sword Sect, one had to talk about the Sword Dao of the sect. Legend had it that the previous sect masters of the Supreme Sword Sect could comprehend the Supreme Sword Intent. In the past, there were even people who had personally witnessed a sect master of a Supreme Sword Sect splitting open the heavens with a single sword strike, breaking through the void and ascending to godhood. Only people from the Supreme Sword Sect can comprehend the Supreme Sword Intent? Are you sure? Jiang Chun said mockingly. Then what am I comprehending? Buzz! The moment he said that, everyone felt a shocking sword intent erupt from Jiang Chun's body. In this sword intent, everyone's expression changed. They felt like a lonely boat that could be drowned by this sword intent at any time and be destroyed. Moreover, this sword intent seemed to have no end. It was supreme and had no heaven and earth. Supreme sword intent? Impossible. Who are you? At this moment, everyone was visibly moved, and even the red-robed young man's expression had changed. It was all because in this world, besides the people of the Supreme Sword Sect, there was absolutely no second person that could comprehend the Supreme Sword Intent. Moreover, not every disciple of the Supreme Sword Sect could comprehend the Supreme Sword Intent. I was the one who concealed the painting. So what? I can also comprehend the supreme sword intent. So what? What do you want? Jiang Chun was very calm. He smiled and said, "None of you can break my seals and formations, therefore. Only I can see this scroll now. If you want to kill me, then no one will be able to comprehend the supreme sword intent in this painting. As such, the restrictions and formations on the dragon throne will not be able to be undone. It's up to you to decide," Jiang Chun said mockingly. "I'll kill you." The red-robed young man was immediately enraged. He slashed out with the peach-wood sword in his hand, and a shocking sword light rushed towards Jiang Chen's face like a mystic light. Jiang Chen chuckled when he saw this. He didn't resist. It was because he knew that the red-robed young man's sword was not something he could withstand, unless he used a forbidden technique. However, Jiang Chun did not dodge or resist. He stood in place with a calm expression. It was because he was confident. "Stop, brat from the Supreme Sword Sect. Don't act recklessly." In an instant, before the sword light hit Jiang Chun, a few angry shouts sounded. Then Li Fengzi, Jilly Prince, and the others all stood in front of Jiang Chun. The few of them struck out with their palms and fists, shattering the red-robed young man's sword light and even protecting Jiang Chun behind them. "It seems that you have made your choice," Jiang Chun said with a smile. "Then, I'll leave this person to you. I'll continue to comprehend the supreme sword intent. The supreme sword intent belongs to you, and the box on the dragon throne belongs to us," Li Fengzi said in a deep voice. "Can you agree?" "I swear on my divine soul, I don't want that box." Jiang Chun was very decisive and swore on the spot. At this moment, Li Fengzi and the others completely believed in Jiang Chun. As for the red-robed young man, his expression was very ugly at this moment, and the killing intent in his eyes soared. He had already comprehended the supreme sword intent by 80 to 90%. Just as he was about to comprehend it completely, he did not expect Jiang Chun to appear halfway. What made him most resentful was that Li Fengzi and the others were actually standing on Jiang Chen's side. And what made him most helpless was that he was powerless to undo the array and restrictions that Jiang Chun had set up on the painting. As a result, he could only watch as Jiang Chun comprehended the supreme sword intent. "Do you really want to do this?" the red-robed young man said coldly. "I can give up this supreme sword intent, but when the time comes, I will be among the people fighting for this box. Only those who are capable will get it. If you have the ability, come and get it." Li Fengzi and the others raised their eyebrows. They all knew that once the restrictions and arrays on the dragon throne were undone, everyone here would become opponents. Since that was the case, what was the difference between having one more opponent and one less opponent? Now, in their hearts, as long as Jiang Chun could comprehend the supreme sword intent and undo the restrictions and arrays on the dragon throne, it would be enough. What did other things have to do with them? It's better to come early than to come at the right time. At this moment, at the main gate of the main hall, a young man wearing brocade clothes and a white jade crown walked in with a smile on his face. Beside him, there was another young man wearing tattered clothes and a bamboo hat, like a fisherman. River Muddler Xinyuan Chongkong, Xinyuan Chongfeng. Everyone's expression froze. When they looked at the two young men, a hint of fear flashed in their eyes. This was because the River Muddler was too famous. They were the prodigies of the underworld continent, and the two of them had never split up, whether it was a one-on-one fight or a battle royale. The two of them had always fought against their opponents with their strength. These two young men were from the Xinyuan family. Back then, when the two of them debuted, they had fought with more than 10 prodigies of the underworld continent on a big river. In that battle, the river had broken and the riverbed had collapsed. More than 10 prodigies of the underworld continent had died. The name River Muddler came from that battle. There are so many prodigies and powerhouses. How can I, Huang Jiuchong, be left out? After a few breaths, Huang Jiuchong appeared in front of everyone at the main gate of the main hall. His injuries had healed, and his cultivation level had skyrocketed. He must have obtained some good fortune elsewhere. It seems like no one is joining forces. In that case, I can also take a share of the loot. After a few breaths, Mu Xingyun also appeared. He looked calm, and an illusory figure floated behind him. That was his path soul. The barren continent has never declined. After 3 breaths, a young man stepped into the main hall and said softly. After that, he stood at the side and did not say anything else. However, the appearance of this person caused the expressions of everyone present to become tense. Even Li Fengzi had a grave expression on his face. This was because this person was the 3rd disciple of the Heaven and Earth Pavilion, Zhuge Taojin. He was a quasi-sage. A few years ago, his name had spread among the prodigies of the other continents. His reputation was as great as anyone present. Chapter 323. All of a sudden, there were so many geniuses in the main hall. Moreover, all of them were famous and powerful. At that moment, they seemed fearless. They walked to the dragon throne and stood in a row. Jiang Chun stood behind Li Fengzi and the others. He looked calm as he secretly used the ever-changing heavenly lamp to comprehend the supreme sword intent. The red-robed young man stood on the other side. His eyes flashed with killing intent, and his face was full of resentment. However, no one said anything. They all stood there quietly. No one asked or said anything. There was not even the slightest sound. That was because everyone who came here was smart. They knew what to ask and what not to ask. He also knew that at this time, since everyone was waiting, then it was fine to continue waiting. There was no need to ask too much. Time continued to pass. Many people came to the main hall one after another. One day later, Jiang Chun suddenly opened his eyes. At the same time, the scroll collapsed and turned into powder. The moment the scroll disappeared, the array and restriction on the dragon throne disappeared. At the same time, the entire palace shook. The palace that had stood for countless years, and even the entire desolate god's training ground, was cracking and collapsing. At the same time, other than Jiang Chun, everyone in the main hall rushed toward the dragon throne. They only had one goal, and that was the ancient box on the dragon throne that seemed to contain the desolate god's inheritance. As for Jiang Chun, after comprehending the supreme sword intent, he retreated and prepared to leave. As he said before, he was not interested in the desolate god's inheritance. Now that he had obtained the supreme sword intent, it was time for him to leave. However, when Jiang Chun came to the exit, he saw Li Fengzi and the others rushing toward him. Huang Jiuchong, Han Jiang, Zhuge Taojin, and the red-robed young man were among them. "What's going on? Where's the box?" Jiang Chun asked. "Tell me, what's the name of the supreme sword intent?" Li Fengzi said coldly. At that moment, his eyes were red as if he had lost his mind. It was as if he had gone crazy. The others were the same. They all stared at Jiang Chun like wolves. In Zhuge Taojin's hand, the ancient box had already been opened. It was empty. "There's no inheritance in here," Huang Jiuchong said coldly. "But there's a piece of paper." "Oh," Jiang Chun said softly, blinking his eyes. How could he not understand the situation in front of him? The note in the box most likely stated that the supreme sword was the inheritance of the Aragami. And when Jiang Chun comprehended the supreme sword intent thoroughly, he also sensed something. It was all because this supreme sword intent was named Desolation. The desolate deity and the desolate deity both had a desolate child, which was hidden in the painting. Furthermore, they were also in the main palace. In addition to what Huang Jiuchong and the others had said, Jiang Chun finally understood everything. In the next moment, Jiang Chun smiled and stepped out of the Desolation God's training ground. "Stay here. Chase." In the face of the Desolation God's inheritance, the group of people could no longer remain calm. This was one of the top inheritances in the godless continent. Once they obtained it, they could create a great sect, a supreme sect, or even dominate the entire godless continent. In the face of the Desolation God's inheritance, even the sages, sage kings, supreme sages, and godly state elites would be jealous. "Huh, what's going on?" After a few breaths, the group of elites standing outside the abyss at the Desolation God's training ground saw Jiang Chun dashing into the distance like a shooting star. Behind him, Li Fengzi and the others were red in the face and eyes as they chased after him with all their might. The desolation god's inheritance has appeared. It's with Jiang Chun. It was unknown who shouted, but it was like a sudden clap of thunder, shaking the hearts of everyone present fiercely for a moment. In the next moment, a sage attacked. His palm turned into clouds and shot up into the sky. Then, it covered the sky and descended. The palm stretched for tens of thousands of miles and covered the entire area. Under the palm, Jiang Chun felt the power of the sage. A hint of fear flashed in his eyes. At this moment, Jiang Chun even planned to use a forbidden technique. Let's see who dares. Suddenly, a roar was heard. The green sky Confucian scholar's hair danced wildly. Like a mad demon, he shattered the palm print with a punch. Then he took a step forward. It was as if he had shrunk the ground into an inch. It was more like he had teleported. In an instant, he was in front of Jiang Chun. He said to Jiang Chun, "You go first. Leave the barren state." "Granelda, what about you?" Jiang Chun's eyes narrowed. He had a bad feeling in his heart. "I'll stand right here," the green sky Confucian scholar said in a deep voice. His expression was solemn, but he was very arrogant. "I'll see who can walk through here." Green sky Confucian scholar. The desolation god's inheritance is of great importance. Don't mess around. Ask Jiang Chun to hand over the desolation god's inheritance and share it with us. Otherwise, we'll flatten the Billow Academy. At that moment, several sages came together and stood in front of the green sky Confucian scholar. However, they did not dare to take another step forward. That was because they all knew how powerful the green sky Confucian scholar was. He was invincible below the immortal state. He would be able to kill anyone above the immortal state, as long as his cultivation had not reached the heavenly deterioration 5th stage. The green sky Confucian scholar was the king of all present. Ba, Master Mingwei had also arrived. He stood directly beside the green sky Confucian scholar. Then he chanted the name of Buddha and said to the crowd, "The desolation god's inheritance is for those who are fated to obtain it. Everyone, don't force it. Fate is fate, but you also need to have the strength to enjoy it. If you don't have the strength, you'll only have fate. I'm afraid you won't be able to enjoy it." An elder of a large sect from the underworld state said in a deep voice, "Master Mingwei, this has nothing to do with you, but it has something to do with me." Morning and evening wine raised his eyebrows in the distance. "Master Mingwei, listen to me." As soon as he said that, everyone's expression changed drastically. Everyone knew the name of Master Mingwei. He was an unparalleled sage monk. But now, such a sage monk actually listened to morning and evening wine. Was this true? "Kid, how about becoming my disciple?" At this moment, an old man wearing tattered clothes and holding a wine gourd in his hand looked like a beggar. He whispered softly and took a sip of the strong wine. Then, he directly crossed the green sky Confucian scholar and Master Mingwei and stood directly in front of Jiang Chun. "What are you doing? How dare you?" In an instant, the green sky Confucian scholar was shocked. He waved his big hand, and like a golden eagle's claw, he rushed toward the beggar-like old man. "Confucian scholar, long time no see. Have you forgotten me?" The beggar-like old man said with a smile. In the blink of an eye, he shattered the green sky Confucian scholar's palm print. At the same time, Shu Gui, Wu Gui, and Mu Gui all landed beside the old man and said respectfully, "Greetings, big brother." "What? The leader of the 10 ghosts, Dao Ghost?" "Dao Ghost? Legend has it that he was killed by the Martial Pavilion a long time ago. How is he still alive?" Everyone exclaimed. Even the green sky Confucian scholar's eyes widened. He could not believe that the beggar-like old man in front of him was actually the leader of the 10 ghosts, Dao Ghost. "Master, can you protect him?" At this moment, Dao Gui appeared at the side. He scratched his head and said awkwardly, "Jiang Chun, I'm sorry. Master warned me not to mention this to anyone." Jiang Chun was already dumbfounded. He stood rooted to the ground. He felt that today's matter had really blown up, and attracted many experts. At the same time, Jiang Chun was also depressed. This Dao Gui's background was so great. He was actually the disciple of the leader of the 10 ghosts, Dao Ghost. In this barren state, there were hidden dragons and crouching tigers around him. My Elixir Pavilion wants this person. Is the Elixir Pavilion trying to steal this person from my Array Pavilion? If this person is willing to join my Array Pavilion, he will be a distinguished guest. In the next moment, something even more surprising happened. The two elders of the Array Pavilion and Elixir Pavilion headquarters came together. Moreover, the moment they spoke, they wanted to protect Jiang Chun and pull Jiang Chun into the Array Pavilion and Elixir Pavilion. Chapter 324. Ever since he was reborn in the Chuanzuan sect, Jiang Chun had always kept a low profile. However, in the eyes of others, Jiang Chun's so-called low profile was like the sun hanging high in the sky, extremely dazzling. As such, Jiang Chun's reputation and ability had been known by many since his rebirth. Among them, the Martial Pavilion, Elixir Pavilion, and Array Pavilion knew the most. The Martial Pavilion knew about Jiang Chun's ability because they had a grudge against him. The Elixir Pavilion and Array Pavilion knew about Jiang Chun's ability because of Lu Shan and Tong Sang. Previously, the upper echelons of the Elixir Pavilion and Array Pavilion headquarters had discussed and decided to rope in Jiang Chun at all costs. Now, they felt that the opportunity to rope in Jiang Chun had arrived. Sect Master, follow us back to the Elixir Pavilion. Tong Sang stood beside an Elixir Pavilion expert and said with a smile, "The Elixir Pavilion can protect you. Let's go to the Array Pavilion." Sect Master, as long as you come to the Array Pavilion, we can make you the Deputy Pavilion Master, Lu Shan said hurriedly. At the same time, another Array Pavilion expert beside him added, "As long as you're willing to join the Array Pavilion, not only can we protect you, but we can also provide you with all cultivation resources." Are you looking down on me, the Blue Sky Confucian Scholar? At that moment, the Blue Sky Confucian Scholar was enraged. He had bet everything on Jiang Chun, even going as far as to become enemies with the Martial Pavilion. Now, the Array Pavilion and Elixir Pavilion were actually snatching him right in front of him. Did they think that he, the Blue Sky Confucian Scholar, was easy to bully? Or could it be that the Billowing Wave Institute and the Azure Sky Tribe were nothing in front of these people and forces? They couldn't even withstand a single blow, and were being looked down upon. "Kid, come with me. The world is so big. Wouldn't it be great to live a carefree life?" Dao Ge said, his eyes shining. "I can teach you everything. I'm a disciple of the Billow Academy," Jiang Chun said softly with a calm expression. "I'm also the sect master of the Chuanzuan sect." Those two sentences expressed Jiang Chun's intentions. He would not leave, nor would he join the Pill Pavilion, nor would he join the Array Pavilion, nor would he take Dao Ghost as his master. As Heavenly Stellar God King, how many people in this world had the qualifications to teach him? As the leader of a sect, how many sects and forces in the world could take him in? Therefore, even though Jiang Chun would leave the Billowing Wave Academy, he wouldn't join any other forces or even become a disciple. If that's the case, then what a pity. Dao Ghost sighed and waved at Shu Gui and the others. "Let's go." As soon as they finished speaking, their figures flashed, and they immediately left. Even Dao Gui and Zhang Lu were forcibly taken away. Fortunately, Dao Gui and the others didn't seem to be interested in the desolate god's inheritance, so they didn't make things difficult for him. After that, the people from the Array Pavilion and the Elixir Pavilion also left. They wouldn't force Jiang Chun, and they understood Jiang Chun's intentions. Since that was the case, and he couldn't use it for himself, why should he protect it? "You two should leave as well." Jiang Chun looked at Lu Shan and Tong Sang and said, "This is not your fault." Sect leader, Lu Shan and Tong Sang were bitter. Their original intention was to help Jiang Chun. However, the two of them had just entered the headquarters of the Elixir Pavilion and Array Pavilion. They didn't have enough authority to protect Jiang Chun. "Mingwei, come back." At that moment, in the distant sky, in the west, a ray of Buddhist light appeared. In the Buddhist light, a figure that was flickering with divine light appeared and waved at Master Mingwei. Master Mingwei couldn't help but sigh when he saw that. Then he grabbed Morning and Evening Wine's shoulder and said, "Grandmaster, he has spoken. Jiang Chenyu, why don't you hand over the Rage God's inheritance?" Morning and Evening Wine said bitterly. Since his grandmaster had spoken, he couldn't stay. And Master Mingwei couldn't help Jiang Chen anymore. Now, if Jiang Chen wanted to leave safely, the only way was to hand over the Rage God's inheritance. However, could Jiang Chen hand it over? If he was willing to hand it over, why would Jiang Chen wait until now? All of you leave for me. The person that I, Azure Sky Confucian Scholar, want to protect, I alone am enough. Azure Sky Confucian Scholar's voice was like thunder, shaking the clouds in the sky until they dissipated. You leave for me too. The next moment, without waiting for Jiang Chen to react, he suddenly saw Azure Sky Confucian Scholar's palm strike toward him. Under this palm, the void behind Jiang Chen opened up. His body was even thrown into a void passageway. Finally, the moment the void passageway closed, Jiang Chen saw Azure Sky Confucian Scholar turn his head and smile through a gap, then charged out. Vaguely, Jiang Chen could hear a series of explosions coming out, and even Azure Sky Confucian Scholar's long howl. Grand Ancestor, Jiang Chen couldn't control his body and could only drift along with the spatial passageway. His eyes were bloodshot, his fists clenched tightly, his heart palpitating endlessly. As Heavenly Stellar Divine King, who in this world could make him personally call Grand Ancestor? As Heavenly Stellar Divine King, he climbed all the way up from a sea of corpses and blood. The blood in his heart had long turned cold. The so-called feelings were also long buried. In this life, if not for encountering these people, perhaps Jiang Chen would have long been heartless. But now, Jiang Chen's heart was moved. His emotions had exploded. Jiang Chen never thought that in this life, there would actually be such an old man who was willing to risk his life for him. If you don't die, if I ascend to heaven, I'll definitely return you a future. Jiang Chen roared in the void passageway, blood essence even dripping from his glabella. This was an oath. Half a day later, Barren State, inside Billow Academy, Jiang Chen transported out of the void passageway. When he discovered that he had returned to Billow Academy, his expression could not help changing drastically. Because Jiang Chen knew that he had become the target of everyone now. If he were to stay in Billow Academy would definitely be implicated. Although Billow Academy was very powerful and had a deep foundation, those sects and forces that wanted to deal with him were all extremely powerful. Those sects and forces would definitely not let Jiang Chen go before they obtained the inheritance of the Desolation God. Moreover, all people and things related to Jiang Chen would be implicated as well. Billow Academy is a good place. Jiang Chen sighed. It's a pity that I have to leave. Where are you going? Stay. No one dares to touch you. Suddenly, a vicissitude voice rang in Jiang Chen's ears. Jiang Chen suddenly turned his head, a trace of astonishment flashing across his eyes. This was because he did not sense when such a person had appeared beside him. Don't be afraid. I am Billow Academy. At this moment, beside Jiang Chen, there was an old man in a blue robe who was smiling at Jiang Chen. He had a benevolent look, and there was a trace of turbidity in his eyes. However, deep within his pupils, there seemed to be a resplendent starry sky. And this person was the dean of Billow Academy. The past deans of Billow Academy were all called Billow Academy. Their real names had lost their meaning the moment they became the dean of the academy. The two words Billow Academy were what they had to protect for the rest of their lives. Chapter 325. That old Confucian is already so old, but he still doesn't know his place, Bo Lan said softly. She seemed to be blaming Qing Kong Confucian, but it also gave people an inexplicable feeling. Senior, I've received the inheritance of the desolate god, Jiang Chen said softly. If I stay, I'll implicate the Billow Academy. So what? When has the Billow Academy ever been afraid of anyone? Bolon said with a smile. She looked up at the sky, and her smile gradually disappeared. A sharp killing intent rose from her body. She said coldly, "The magnificent world is also the heart and life of the Billow Academy. Those who dare to come, just kill them," Bolon said. "Go back and cultivate. Other things have nothing to do with you." "This isn't really okay?" Jiangchen frowned. He was a little worried, because this time, the Billow Academy had to face more than just the martial pavilion. The Middle Ground Dynasty, the Ninely Dynasty, the Humanoid Dragon Tribe, and even the Supreme Sword Sect. Any one of these top sects and forces on the Godless Continent was enough to compete with, or even suppress the Billow Academy. Now, the Billow Academy had to face so many top forces all of a sudden. Could the Billow Academy withstand it? If they couldn't withstand it, would the Billowing Waves Academy be destroyed? Do you know why the top 10 academies have never fallen since ancient times? Bolon suddenly asked. Jiangchen couldn't help but be struck dumb. Then, Jiangchen thought about it carefully. He couldn't help but feel a little shocked. Just like what Bolon said, the top 10 academies, even the ones ranked at the bottom, had never fallen since the day they were established. Then, was there some secret hidden in this? Maybe it was this secret that allowed the top 10 academies to stand tall in the barren state. Confucian Grand Ancestor, Jiangchen said worriedly. Him? Ha! Bolon pursed her lips. Do they have God Realm cultivators? No. Jiangchen shook his head. Do they have Heaven's Blight experts? Bolon asked. No. Jiangchen shook his head again. Bolon rolled her eyes and said snappily, "Then what are you worried about?" I don't have to worry." Jiangchen was stunned and confused. One had to know that outside the wilderness god Dao field, there were as many saints as there were clouds, and there was no lack of great saint-level top powerhouses. And the blue sky Confucian scholar was only one person. With the strength of a single person and the same cultivation realm, no matter how strong he was, it would be difficult for him to remain safe. It was just like how Jiangchen had been in the past. As a god king, he was extremely powerful, yet hadn't he still been ganged up on and killed by 36 master gods? "I'm invincible below the god plane. I didn't just say that casually," Bolon said softly. "He is a genius of the barren state." After she finished speaking, Wave left. She soared into the sky and headed out of the Wave Academy. In a few breaths, he disappeared from Jiangchen's sight. Jiangchen stood in the same place. After hesitating for a while, he returned to the cave house. As soon as he returned, Qin Kong Xinyue appeared in front of Jiangchen and asked, "Are you all right?" Jiangchen was confused again. He asked, "Shouldn't you ask the Grand Ancestor if he's all right?" "Ask him?" Qin Kong Xinyue was stunned for a moment. What can happen to the Grand Ancestor? Jiangchen was speechless. He thought to himself, "You guys really trust the blue sky Confucian scholar very much." Then Jiangchen didn't say anything. He sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate. Although he had comprehended the supreme sword intent, he needed to continuously comprehend it after comprehending it to comprehend the profoundness within. Moreover, the supreme sword intent was extremely domineering. The slightest carelessness would cause his soul to collapse. When Jiangchen comprehended the supreme sword intent, he could only use the 10,000 transformations heavenly lamp. Otherwise, with his current comprehension and attainments in Sword Dao, he wouldn't be able to comprehend this sword intent at all. Time slowly passed, until 3 days later, on this day, someone saw the blue sky Confucian scholar return. He was covered in blood, and his aura was dispirited. His forehead was cracked, and one could see his soul sitting cross-legged in his mind. However, he was holding 6 saint skulls in his hand. These were his spoils of war, his glory. As expected of the Billowing Wave Academy's guardian, "I'm invincible below the immortal realm." Below the immortal realm, one for one, only the Grand Ancestor of the Confucian scholar can win. The people of the Billowing Wave Academy were excited and exhilarated. Some even shouted the blue sky Confucian scholar's name. After the blue sky Confucian scholar returned, he didn't look for Jiang Chen. Instead, he went into seclusion to cultivate. Qin Kong Xianyue stood beside Jiang Chen and said softly, "The Grand Ancestor is back." "It's good that you're back," Jiang Chen said softly. When he opened and closed his eyes, there seemed to be a green blade of grass floating in his eyes. There was nothing special about the blade of grass. It was like a weed, but its leaves swayed and emitted a green light. There were 3 leaves and 1 blade of grass. It was as if it was the only thing in the world. "What is this?" Qin Kong Xianyue asked. "Supreme sword intent," Jiang Chen said softly. "Baron, the desolate god's inheritance?" Qin Kong Xianyue asked curiously. "Yes." Jiang Chen nodded. Then he couldn't help but frown. This was because he sensed a few extremely powerful auras outside his cave abode. Among these auras, there were a few that Jiang Chen was very familiar with. They were Li Fengzi and the others. They actually entered the Billowing Wave Academy. Jiang Chen narrowed his eyes and stood up. Then he opened the door of his cave and walked out. Jiang Chen, hand over the desolate god's inheritance. Immediately, Li Fengzi shouted. His eyes shone brightly, and the shadow of a true dragon floated behind him. He held the dragon scale armor in his left hand and the dragon scale reverse sword in his right. He looked like a god of war. Huang Jiuchong, Zhuge Taojin, the Jili Prince, and the others stood beside him. Since you can enter the Billowing Wave Academy, it means that the Billowing Wave Academy has reached some kind of agreement with the forces that you belong to, right? Jiang Chen raised his eyebrows and asked, "Yes, so what? If we defeat you without becoming a martial sage, you will have to hand over the desolate god's inheritance. This is the agreement that we have reached with the Billowing Wave Academy," the Jili Prince said. Hearing this, Jiang Chen couldn't help but laugh. His heart that was in his throat also calmed down. Since these top forces had reached an agreement with the Billowing Wave Academy, it meant that these top forces were afraid of the Billowing Wave Academy. This also meant that the Billowing Wave Academy could still protect Jiang Chen. However, the Billowing Wave Academy didn't dare to act recklessly. They could only reach an agreement with these top forces. This agreement was really good for Jiang Chen. So, will it be one-on-one, or will all of you come at me together? Jiang Chen asked. If it was one-on-one, Jiang Chen wouldn't have to worry about anything. However, if all of them came at him together, Jiang Chen would really want to curse them. After all, Li Fengzi and the others were the top geniuses of their respective prefectures. If all of them came at him together, Jiang Chen wouldn't be able to stop them unless he used a forbidden technique. One-on-one, Huang Jiuchong said. This is the agreement. We won't break the rules. Then all right, Jiang Chen said. Then he turned around and returned to the cave abode. Immediately after, the door of the cave abode closed. The group of people were stunned. Chapter 326. Jiang Chen, what do you mean? Don't you dare to fight? The prince of Jili tribe shouted angrily. Come out. Does the agreement state that I have to accept the challenge? Jiang Chen's voice came from the cave. Everyone was speechless when they heard that. In the evil agreement between the Billow Academy and the Big Sex, it didn't state that Jiang Chen had to accept the challenge. Jiang Chen could choose not to fight. If he didn't fight, Jiang Chen wouldn't lose. If he didn't lose, they would never get the inheritance of the desolate god. This was a loophole. Li Fengzi and the others were speechless when they saw the closed door of the cave. Although they could enter the Billow Academy, they couldn't act recklessly. Go back and report to the elders in the sect. Ask them to amend the agreement. It must be amended. After a few breaths, everyone left. Some of them sent messages to the higher-ups of the sections. However, the agreement couldn't be made overnight. It needed to be discussed by the higher-ups of all sections. As a result, 10 days had passed by the time the agreement was amended. On this day, Li Fengzi and the others came to Jiang Chen's cave again. They wanted to force Jiang Chen to come out of the cave with the agreement. However, as soon as Jiang Chen showed up in front of them, their pupils suddenly contracted, and their hair stood on end. This was because Jiang Chen looked ordinary at the moment. Even the brilliance in his eyes had been restrained. He looked like an ordinary person with a smile on his face. He stood in front of everyone and said softly, "Who's first?" "You." "What's wrong with you?" Li Fengzi frowned. He couldn't sense Jiang Chen's cultivation. It was as if Jiang Chen had really become a cripple. "Your cultivation has been destroyed." "What happened to you?" "It can't be. It can't be." Everyone was confused. They couldn't believe that Jiang Chen's cultivation had really disappeared. "Don't you know how to return to one's natural state?" Jiang Chen rolled his eyes and said, "It seems that you guys are still used to me showing off." "Wang." The moment he finished speaking, a terrifying power of heaven and earth exploded from Jiang Chen's body. Immediately after, the sound of a sword rang out from his body. He stood tall and straight, like a sharp sword that had never left its sheath. Supreme Sword Intent. During this period of time, you have been cultivating the Supreme Sword Intent. Huang Jiucheng and the rest looked terrible. Facing Jiang Chen was like facing a murderous sword. It was as if as long as Jiang Chen made a move, tens of thousands of swords would shoot out. Supreme Sword Intent is a concept related to the way of the sword. It can only be comprehended and not fixed. Jiang Chen said, "Those who say that they cultivate the unparalleled sword intent, you guys don't understand the way of the sword. Even if I give this desolation to you, you guys won't be able to comprehend it. Even if we can't comprehend it, there are plenty of people in the inner sect who can." The Julie Prince raised his eyebrows. "Stop resisting. Your cultivation is too low now. You're no match for us. Let me give you a piece of advice. According to the agreement, even if we kill you in a one-on-one fight, the Billow Academy can't do anything to us." Xin Yuan Changfeng said with murderous intent in his eyes. Jiang Chen chuckled and shrugged nonchalantly. "As long as you guys can kill me, I'll give you my life." With that, Jiang Chen stood up and looked at the sky. Then, he silently walked toward the Tribulation Dojo of the Billow Academy. A group of people followed him. When they arrived at the Tribulation Dojo, they were shocked to find that the place was already filled with tribulation clouds. In the middle of the dojo, below the tribulation clouds, Jiang Chen stood there valiantly, with a faint smile on his face. That smile was a little unruly, a little arrogant, and a little confident. "Everything is ready. It's time to break through," Jiang Chen said softly. His body shook, and a few more tribulation clouds appeared in the sky above his head. The people of the Billow Academy were already used to it. They looked at Jiang Chen with a numb expression. Occasionally, someone would say, "He's going to undergo tribulation clouds again." To Huang Jiucheng and the others, this was not a normal thing. When ordinary people underwent tribulation clouds, they would at most go through one tribulation cloud at a time. However, Jiang Chen attracted so many tribulation clouds at once. How many tribulations was he going to undergo? "Are you courting death?" Huang Jiucheng frowned. "Hand over the Supreme Sword Intent, and you won't have to die." "Why bother? We are only here for the Supreme Sword Intent. Why must you seek your own death?" Li Fengzi sighed and said, "Hand over the Supreme Sword Intent, and my Central Continent dynasty will promise not to harm your life." "Are you guys idiots?" Jiang Chen glanced at Li Fengzi and the others. Then, he opened his arms as if he was welcoming something. Boom! Boom! In the next moment, the tribulation clouds in the sky moved violently. Bolts of lightning exploded like a waterfall of lightning, drowning Jiang Chen in the blink of an eye. The red lotus karmic fire burned, the 5 elemental radiance flickered, and a strange phenomenon appeared. Golden lotuses covered the ground. The violent aura of tribulation clouds represented the destructive lightning, and it completely exploded. The people of the Billow Academy were very calm. Some of them even started a bet in the distance. They were betting on how long Jiang Chen would take to pass the tribulation clouds. Li Fengzi and the others were dumbfounded. How could there be such a bet? Even if there was a bet, shouldn't it be on whether Jiang Chen could pass the tribulation clouds and not on how long it would take? One had to know that even Li Fengzi and the others did not have the confidence to pass through so many violent tribulation clouds. 6 Unity Art. Cultivate 2 physical souls and 4 spiritual souls. condense the Tao seed, directly connect to the spiritual altar, and strive for the peak of the great Tao. At this moment, under the sky full of lightning, Jiang Qin's mind was clear. He circulated the six unity art and used the tribulation clouds to cleanse his physical soul and spiritual soul. This time, Jiang Qin wanted to pass all the tribulation clouds in one go and cultivate the six unity art to perfection. This was because Jiang Qin knew that he did not have much time left. Now, the people he had to face were at least in the lower heaven realm, and the highest was a quasi-sage. If he did not raise his cultivation level and remained in the supremacy realm, he would be attacked. Lightning continued to fall, the red lotus karmic fire burned, and the five elemental force was like a tsunami. All of this was on Jiang Qin's body. Beside him was like the eye of a storm. The tribulation clouds and lightning power inside were simply terrifying to the extreme. Cracks even appeared in the void around him. It was as if the lightning was going to shatter this space. However, no matter how much lightning struck him, Jiang Qin remained unmoved. Although his saint body was unknown, his recovery ability was amazing. His physical body was as strong as a boulder. His undying bird Tao soul was also crying, protecting Jiang Qin's foundation and healing his injuries. 2 hours later, when the clouds disappeared and the lightning in the sky dissipated, Jiang Qin appeared in front of the crowd, safe and sound. At the same time, a long cry came from his body, and a wisp of earth chi appeared on his body. Complete supremacy realm. First step into the earth realm. Jiang Qin whispered. His Tao seed had broken through the limit and reached an unknown level. Jiang Qin only knew that the moment he entered the earth realm, the Tao seed attracted the power of earth into his body. Even at that moment, with the help of the doctrine seed, Jiang Qin managed to reach the middle level of the earth realm after stepping into the earth realm. Chapter 327. The earth realm was the chi of Tao, the energy of the underworld, and the origin of the earth. Once a cultivator entered the earth realm, it was equivalent to a metamorphosis. That was because only from the earth realm onwards could one truly come into contact with the Tao, understand the Tao, and obtain its power. The amount of Tao power one could obtain depended on the level of one's Taoist seed. The higher the level of one's Taoist seed, the easier it was to understand the Tao and obtain more Tao power. For example, Jiang Qin's Taoist seed was at an unknown level, but it was terrifyingly high. After he broke through to the earth realm, the Tao power continuously rushed into his body and merged with his cultivation. That was why he broke through to the intermediate level of the earth realm. Intermediate level of the earth realm? What's going on? He leaped up. Everyone exclaimed, their eyes flashing with shock. There were many geniuses present, and even more monstrous geniuses. They were the top geniuses of their respective continents. However, when they had achieved the earth realm, they hadn't skipped a grade like Jiang Qin had. Everyone, let's begin. At that moment, Jiang Qin had an unruly smile on his face. His eyes shone with arrogance and confidence. Being at the intermediate level of the earth realm gave Jiang Qin the confidence to fight these geniuses head-on. I'll go first. Let me go first. At that moment, Li Fengzi and the others hurriedly spoke, requesting to be the first to fight Jiang Qin. That was because the agreement was very clear. Whoever defeated Jiang Qin first would get the ultimate sword intent, and they could not snatch it. In their eyes, even if Jiang Qin was at the intermediate level of the earth realm, he was no match for them. Whoever attacked first would get the ultimate sword intent. Jiang Qin chuckled. He thought to himself that these guys were really treating him like a piece of soft tofu. I'll go first. At that moment, Huang Jiuchong stepped out. He scanned the crowd and said coldly, "Does anyone have a problem with that?" The moment he said that, everyone frowned. Their faces were filled with displeasure. However, what was surprising was that no one objected. Even Jiang Qin was slightly puzzled. Since when did the words of a 9th-level Emperor Realm cultivator carry so much weight? Prince of the Renlong Realm, I don't mind giving you some face. Li Fengzi raised his eyebrows and clenched his fists. He was obviously unhappy. The Ninely Prince, Hun Jiang, Zhuge Taojin, and the others were also displeased. However, just as Li Fengzi said, the status of the Dragon Prince was too high. Unless it was absolutely necessary, no one was willing to provoke the Draconic clan. Moreover, among the people present, a 9th-level Emperor Realm cultivator wasn't the strongest. With that, everyone had an idea. They wanted to let Huang Jiucheng make the first move to test Jiang Qin's strength. Just take it as a vanguard. Huang Jiucheng, are you sure about today's battles? Jiang Qin chuckled. Today, all the geniuses are here. If you lose, aren't you afraid that your reputation will be ruined? What do I have to be afraid of? Huang Jiucheng raised his eyebrows. I can be arrogant, and I can accept my defeat wholeheartedly. Then let's try, Jiang Qin said softly. The moment he finished speaking, he charged forward like a bolt of golden lightning. In the blink of an eye, Jiang Qin arrived in front of Huang Jiucheng. His fist was like a golden millstone as it smashed down on Huang Jiucheng's head. Roar! Huang Jiucheng roared. His voice was like a dragon's roar. Dragon chi circled around his body, and his dragon aura surged. He also threw out a punch. His fist was like a dragon's claw, and his entire body was covered in dragon scales. The dragon's might was vast and mighty, as if it was going to suppress everything. Li Fengzi and the others were shocked. They could feel the terrifying power of Huang Jiucheng's punch. They started to worry. If Huang Jiucheng really defeated Jiang Qin, the unparalleled sword intent would belong to Huang Jiucheng. They could ask Jiang Qin for the unparalleled sword intent, but they couldn't just ask Huang Jiucheng for it. After all, Huang Jiucheng was the prince of the humanoid dragon tribe. Destroy. However, to everyone's surprise, Jiang Qin only said the word destroy in a low voice. Then they saw a cyan glaze radiance erupting from his fist. It was the power of the earth. The power of the earth exploded like a whirlpool and instantly crushed Huang Jiucheng's fist into nothingness. Just after this, Jiang Qin retreated quickly, while he shook his hands on the way, and the power of black and yellow turned into a golden longbow. After retreating for 100 miles, Jiang Qin steadied himself. The longbow in his hand shook, and the power of heaven and earth turned into sharp arrows. 10,000 arrows! Jiang Qin shouted loudly. In an instant, tens of thousands of sharp arrows were shot out. They blotted out the sky and covered the earth. It was like a storm. How can you do anything to me with such petty tricks? Huang Jiucheng roared, and the shadow of a real dragon appeared behind him. A dragon's aura swept across the sky and shattered the tens of thousands of arrows. In the next moment, without waiting for Jiang Qin to attack again, Huang Jiucheng rushed out, and a terrifying dragon's aura exploded. Under the dragon's aura, the space seemed to have been sealed. Many people found it difficult to move. It was difficult to even move a finger. It was the same for Jiang Qin. Under the dragon's aura, Jiang Qin's movements became slow. Even the wind in the space stopped. This was the dragon's aura sealing technique, as expected of the Draconian clan. Their dragon's aura have reached the point of perfection. They can seal the space. The Jiuli prince said softly with a hint of disdain in his eyes. Li Fengzi also curled his lips. After all, the foundation of the Zhongzhou dynasty was the dragon's aura and dragon's aura. In Li Fengzi's opinion, the dragon's aura that the Draconian clan had was not as powerful as the dragon's aura of the Zhongzhou dynasty. At that moment, Jiang Qin's figure faded in the sky as if he had disintegrated. In the next moment, the crowd saw 6 clones that looked exactly like Jiang Qin. Bird's 6 flashes. Along with a loud shout, the 6 clones looked like divine birds that were shining brightly. They swooped down and headed toward Huang Jiucheng in a strange way. Huang Jiucheng was fearless. He opened his hands wide and punched out, trying to destroy the 6 clones. However, when he was fully focused on the 6 clones, a black shadow quietly approached him and appeared behind him without a sound. Huang Jiucheng sensed something and quickly turned around. However, it was too late. In front of him, Jiang Qin's real body was looking at him with a smile. At the same time, one of Jiang Qin's fingers landed on Huang Jiucheng's glabella. "You've lost," Jiang Qin said with a smile. If he used more strength, his finger would have pierced through Huang Jiucheng's glabella and killed him. "Thank you for showing mercy." Huang Jiucheng had a strange look on his face. He knew that Jiang Qin had gone easy on him this time. Otherwise, Jiang Qin's finger would have pierced through the back of his head and destroyed his spiritual soul before he could even turn around. Chapter 328. As soon as Huang Jiucheng finished speaking, Jiang Qin's 6 clones suddenly shot out and swooped down like 6 phoenixes. But at the last moment, they disappeared into nothingness. During this time, Huang Jiucheng could clearly feel that the power of the 6 clones was enough to suppress him. "When you become a saint, I'm afraid you'll be the second blue sky scholar," Huang Jiucheng commented. He was completely convinced of Jiang Qin's strength and was even fearful of him. "The second blue sky scholar?" Jiang Qin said softly. Then he smiled and said, "That might not be the case." The blue sky scholar was very strong. He had not become a god, but he had the strength to compete with a godly state expert. With the blue sky scholar's strength, he could be considered one of the top saints in the entire godless continent, let alone the barren state. Huang Jiucheng's evaluation of Jiang Qin was already very high. It could even be said that it was the highest evaluation. But to Jiang Qin, if he became a saint in the future, what was a godly state cultivator? Even a Deva 5th Blight powerhouse was merely a wisp of smoke in front of him. Huang Jiucheng lost. "This is a little tricky." At this moment, Li Fengzi and the others had ugly expressions and frowned. This was because they more or less knew how strong Huang Jiucheng was. But now, Huang Jiucheng had been defeated, and from the looks of it, he had been thoroughly defeated. Since Huang Jiucheng had been defeated, what would happen when they fought Jiang Qin? Previously, Li Fengzi and the others were worried that if Huang Jiucheng won, the ultimate sword intent would belong to him. But now, Li Fengzi and the others were worried about how many of them could defeat Jiang Qin. Some of them even felt guilty and had a bad feeling. "Don't tell me none of us can defeat Jiang Qin," someone murmured in a low voice. He couldn't believe what he had just said. However, this feeling was simply too intense. Some people were secretly observing the expressions of Li Fengzi and the others. They discovered that these strongest geniuses also had extremely solemn expressions. "If you think you're weaker than an Emperor Realm cultivator, don't challenge me," said Jiang Qin. "It's just a waste of time. Can the two of us attack together?" At this moment, Xinyuan Changfeng and Xinyuan Changkong took a step forward. Ever since the two of them started cultivating, no matter what they did, they were always together, 1 against 2. Although it was bullying, it was a common occurrence for the 2 Muddle River cultivators. "Come at me together, of course," Jiang Qin said mockingly. "However, if the 2 of you attack me together and lose to me, where will you put your face?" As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of the 2 people changed. Their expressions became strange, and there was even a hint of struggle in the depths of their eyes. Just as Jiang Qin had said, if the 2 of them were defeated by Jiang Qin, even though they joined forces, they would lose all their face. "We'll fight another day. We don't want this supreme sword intent anymore," Xinyuan Changfeng said softly, then retreated to the side. It was obvious that the 2 Muddle River cultivators cared more about their reputation. Moreover, the Xinyuan clan was a powerful clan that had a long history. The Xinyuan clan had a deep foundation and did not lack any supreme inheritances. This time, the 2 Muddle River cultivators' main purpose of coming here was to broaden their horizons. "Brother, let me go," said Li Fengyuan. He looked at Li Fengzi as if he was asking for his opinion. "Just try. Don't force yourself," said Li Fengzi. "Your strength is on par with Huang Jiucheng's. If Huang Jiucheng lost, you definitely won't be a match for Jiang Qin." "Brother, we haven't fought yet." "Why do you say that?" Li Fengyuan was unconvinced and said, "We should let them see the strength of the great princes of the Zhou Empire." "Huh, A few of the great princes of the Zhou Empire died in the Desolation God Arena, someone said disdainfully. There are so many princes in the Zhou Empire, but only Li Fengzi is capable. As for you, in our eyes, you're just a clown. What did you say? Li Fengyuan was immediately furious. He glanced sideways, but when he saw the person who spoke, his expression couldn't help but turn gloomy. His body couldn't help but tremble slightly. This was because the person who had spoken was Zhuge Taojin, the third disciple of the Heaven and Earth Pavilion. Jiang Chun, I'm here on behalf of the Heaven and Earth Pavilion, said Zhuge Taojin. He ignored Li Fengyuan and looked at Jiang Chun. If I defeat you, the Heaven and Earth Pavilion doesn't want the supreme sword intent, but you must join the Heaven and Earth Pavilion. Okay. Jiang Chun nodded indifferently and said, it's the same wherever I go. With that, Jiang Chun raised his head and looked at the sky. After a dozen breaths, he sighed and said, I can't stay in the barren state for long. I'll leave sooner or later. Jiang Chun, fight! At that moment, Li Fengyuan roared and took a step forward. His dragon's breath was violent, and a mighty dragon's might erupted. Jiang Chun's expression was calm. His figure flashed and turned into 6 doppelgangers. 6 flashes. The 6 doppelgangers swooped down from the sky like 6 phoenixes. They carried the power of thunder and a terrifying power of the earth. This was a power unique to the earth realm. Dragon Shadow! Li Fengyuan shouted, and several dragon shadows appeared beside him. They were like green dragons and rushed toward Jiang Chun's 6 doppelgangers. However, doppelgangers met doppelgangers. In just one exchange, Li Fengyuan's dragon shadow doppelgangers were all shattered. Immediately after, the 6 phoenix-like doppelgangers pierced through Li Fengyuan's body, leaving 6 bloody holes on his body. One of the bloody holes was just a few inches away from piercing through Li Fengyuan's forehead. Li Fengzi, I respect you as a hero and an ambitious person. That's why I gave you face. Jiang Chun said softly. Otherwise, I would have killed this person. Li Fengyuan, come back, Li Fengzi said softly, then cupped his hands at Jiang Chun and said, thank you. Back then, Li Fengyuan had sent people to kill Wakako, Jiang Lu, and the others in the desolate God Square for no reason. This matter had already made him an enemy of Jiang Chun. If Li Fengzi hadn't intervened and settled this matter, Li Fengyuan would have been a dead man now. However, although the matter back then had been settled, Jiang Chun still had resentment in his heart. And Li Fengzi also knew this, so now he was thanking Jiang Chun. Do you dare to kill me? I am a prince of the Central State Dynasty. If you dare to kill me, the Central State Dynasty's army will definitely arrive at the Billowing Wave Academy in 3 days. Li Fengyuan shouted angrily. Enough! Don't you feel ashamed? Li Fengzi angrily rebuked, coldly glancing at Li Fengyuan, and said, get lost. Brother! Li Fengyuan stared, as if he couldn't believe that his brother would not leave him any face in front of so many people. Chapter 329. Emperors can achieve great things. You are a disgrace to the middle ground imperial family. Li Fengzi shouted angrily. Then he looked at the crowd and smiled. I'm sorry, everyone. I made a fool of myself. Li Fengzi, you are quite a character. Unfortunately, the throne of the middle ground imperial family is not yours. Xinyuan Changfeng said mockingly. No matter how strong you are, no matter how courageous and powerful you are, you will only be ranked second. Your brother, the first prince, can ascend to the throne and become the emperor of the Central Plains Empire even if he does nothing. That's my family's business. Li Fengzi smiled. His expression did not change, but his hands were clenched tightly in his sleeves. Obviously, Li Fengzi was unhappy. However, he would never say it out loud. The supreme sword intent should have been mine. Today I will return it. At this moment, the red-robed youth from the supreme sword sect walked out. He held a green wooden sword in his hand and pointed it at Jiang Chun. Do you dare to fight with my sword, principal? The supreme sword sect masters were all supreme experts in sword principle. It could be said that if the supreme sword sex people said that they were second in sword principle, it would be difficult for anyone in the world to say that they were first. Of course, there were exceptions. Previously, if Jiang Chun had not interfered, the supreme desolation sword intent would have been the red-robed youth's. At this moment, the red-robed youth's eyes were filled with killing intent. He could not wait to cut Jiang Chun into pieces and swallow him alive. However, he was very cautious. He knew that Jiang Chun was very strong, so he wanted to fight with Jiang Chun with his own strength. Fight with my sword principle? Jiang Chun said softly. The supreme sword sex sword principle is not necessarily the best in the world. What a joke! How many sword cultivators in the world dare to speak so arrogantly in front of the supreme sword sect? The red-robed youth rebuked angrily. Then, he looked serious and said, Supreme Sword Sex Lin Qingshan, please enlighten me. You are not asking for enlightenment. You are asking for death, Jiang Chun said. With a wave of his hand, chasing heaven appeared in his hand. In an instant, everyone's eyes locked on a chasing sky. The greed in the eyes of a few people was not concealed at all. This was because Sky Chaser's name had shaken the world. It was the weapon of deity King Tian Chun. No matter if it was an ordinary cultivator or a sword cultivator, their love for chasing after the heavens was unimaginable. Stop sword style, one stop. At that moment, Lin Qingshan shouted and dashed out like a ray of light. The long sword in his hand was roaring like a dragon. It was accompanied by rays of sword light that seemed indestructible. In the blink of an eye, he rushed to 100 feet in front of Jiang Chun. His figure suddenly stopped, and the long sword in his hand seemed to have stopped. In the next second, the sword aura erupted from the motionless sword. Like a long rainbow, it shot straight towards Jiang Chun. Supreme Sword Sex halting sword style. It said that every time it stops, it kills one person, and 10 times it stops without leaving a trace. Above 10 halts, all saints will perish. Many people had heard of the Supreme Sword Sex halting sword style, but they had never seen it before. Now that they saw Lin Qingshan's halting sword style, it naturally attracted everyone's attention. However, in the next moment, the long sword in Jiang Chun's hand vibrated gently in front of him. A ray of sword light turned into ripples and spread out. In an instant, Lin Qingshan's halting sword style was dispersed. Second stop. Lin Qingshan did not hesitate. His figure flashed on the spot and then landed on top of Jiang Chun's head. Then his figure and the long sword in his hand stopped again. This stop lasted for 3 breaths of time. 3 breaths of time. To Jiang Chun, there were thousands of ways to defeat Lin Qingshan. However, Jiang Chun did not do that. He wanted to see how strong the Supreme Sword Sex halting sword style was. It's coming! Second stop! Mountain stop! At that moment, the crowd exclaimed. On Lin Qingshan's long sword, an illusory mountain appeared. Then, the illusory mountain collapsed. A sharp sword aura erupted from the illusory mountain and slashed down at Jiang Chun. Interesting. Each stop is stronger than the last. It's borrowing some kind of power. There's the power of heaven and earth in it. Jiang Chun thought to himself. If this halting sword style could be executed for more than 10 stops, Jiang Chun felt that he would lose without a doubt. However, the power of the second stop was not something Jiang Chun cared about. Jiang Chun's chasing heaven vibrated gently in front of him again. A sword flower appeared and then spread out, turning into 6 rays of sword light and shattering Lin Qingshan's second stop. At the same time, Lin Qingshan's figure moved again and landed on Jiang Chun's left side. Then he suddenly stopped. This stop lasted for another 3 breaths of time. This time, Jiang Chun still did not move and allowed Lin Qingshan to execute the third stop. As soon as he stopped, the crowd saw a giant beast appear. It raised its head and roared. Then a sword radiance fell from the sky and hit the top of Jiang Chun's head. He's dead? What a fast sword light. Jiang Chun's head was hit? Did it shatter? Many people exclaimed. Only Li Fengzi and the others were calm. It was because they saw very clearly that Lin Qingshan's third stop sword light had already disappeared 3 inches away from Jiang Chen's head. At the same time, chasing heaven rushed up and turned into a meteor, shattering the giant beast phantom in the air. The third stop was broken. So strong. Just middle-level Earth realm, but he can easily resolve the first 3 stops of the Supreme Sword Sect's halting sword style. Amazing! Lin Qingshan is a quasi-sage. With his strength, he actually can't suppress Jiang Chen. Under the exclamations, Lin Qingshan's expression became very ugly. His cultivation was much higher than Jiang Chen's, and he even executed the third stop in a row. In the end, he did not hurt Jiang Chen at all. To him, this was simply a humiliation. Wind! At this moment, Lin Qingshan seemed to be really angry. With a long roar, a gale roared out beside him. Looking carefully, that was not a gale in the true sense, but his Tao spirit. Jiang Chen stared at the gale Tao spirit, secretly thinking that it was a little tricky. The gale Tao spirit had always belonged to the strongest Tao spirit since ancient times. It was just that since ancient times, people who possessed the gale Tao spirit had never been strong. Therefore, this gale Tao spirit had never entered the top 10 of the Tao spirit list. However, no one would doubt the power of the gale Tao spirit, because this Tao spirit had a very special ability. Acceleration. 4th stop. 5th stop. 6th stop. Under the support of the gale Tao spirit, Lin Qingshan's attacks became even more ferocious and extremely fast. He did not stop at all. His movements were like flowing water. In one breath, he executed the third stop in a row. In the third stop, the sword light turned into the sun, moon, and stars. Light shone in all directions, directly drowning Jiang Chen. However, this time, Jiang Chen couldn't stay calm anymore. His arms shook, and chasing heaven slashed out 16 sword lights in a row. Each sword was like a dragon, and when it collided with the third stop sword lights, the sword lights that Jiang Chen slashed out turned into stone dragons. Chapter 330. Boom! Boom! 16 consecutive explosions were heard. The 16 stone dragons were shattered. At the same time, the sun, moon, and stars from the 3 halts disappeared. You're forcing me! Lin Qingshan was furious. The 3 halts did not hurt Jiang Chen at all. Moreover, there were so many people watching from all around, making him feel like he had lost all face. If he could perform more than 10 halts, I can admit defeat. The supreme sword will belong to you, Jiang Chen said softly, but his expression was serious. Jiang Chen had to admit that Lin Qingshan was very strong. His attainments in the way of the sword were not comparable to his peers. 10 halts? Then I'll show you. Lin Qingshan's eyes were red. The acceleration effect of the wild wind Tao soul was activated. His body moved horizontally in the air and stopped continuously. Every time he paused, his aura would increase by a notch, and a terrifying sword light would erupt. As for Jiang Chen, he was still standing where he was. He looked calm. Compared to his previous serious look, the current Jiang Chen looked a little bit calm. Lin Qingshan has lost. At that moment, Li Fengzi said softly and shook his head. He's not Jiang Chen's match after all. What? Lost? Impossible. He's already performed 9 halts. A few people did not believe it and refuted Li Fengzi. However, the 9ly crown prince who was next to them sneered. He said, since Jiang Chen knew that Lin Qingshan would lose if he used more than 10 halts, how could he give Lin Qingshan a chance to use more than 10 halts? But he didn't move. Someone frowned. Boom! However, as soon as he finished speaking, the crowd saw Jiang Chen, who had been standing where he had been, suddenly explode and turn into a rain of light. At the same time, the sword ray in this part of the sky surged and a huge sun appeared out of thin air. If one took a closer look, one would see that it was Jiang Chen in the sun. The power of heaven and earth was roaring, and the sky chaser in his hand was like a real dragon. Dragon raises its head, accompanied by a long roar. Jiang Chen slashed down with chasing heaven. Following that, he drew an arc upwards. A sword beam rose from bottom, to top like a true dragon raising its head. Roar! Faintly, everyone heard a dragon roar that shook the heavens. Dragon raises its head? What kind of move is this? Moves of the Sword Tao. Which sect was he from? I've heard of it before. Many people were puzzled, as they couldn't figure out dragon raises its head style and origin. However, they could feel that the power contained in this sword ray that was like a real dragon raising its head was simply terrifying. At the same time, Lin Qingshan's figure stopped in the air. His aura was almost comparable to that of a sage. "10 stop." Lin Qingshan let out a long howl and stopped. The sword light in his hand dissipated, but then it exploded again. However, before he could slash with his sword, a sword ray in the shape of a dragon head came from below. It opened its huge dragon mouth and swallowed him. Boom! In the next moment, with a loud explosion, everyone saw Lin Qingshan fall from the sky. The long sword in his hand broke, and he couldn't perform the 10th stop. If it weren't for the Gale Daoist spirit, he wouldn't even have the chance to perform the 9th stop. Li Fengzi pursed his lips. The stopping sword style has its flaws after all. But what's up with Jiang Chen's sword Dao? That dragon raises its head. Doesn't seem like a martial technique. Jili Prince said with a frown. It's a martial technique, but it's a divine technique. Huang Jiucheng said in a low voice. His understanding of the Dao is too deep. With his Earth Realm cultivation, he can already use part of the Dao's power, which is enough for him to perform a divine technique. The moment he said that, everyone was shocked. Martial techniques were divided into ranks. The higher the rank, the more powerful they were, but the stricter the conditions to perform them. Divine techniques were above ordinary martial techniques. In order to perform a divine technique, one's cultivation had to be in the Earth Realm. Secondly, one had to use the Dao's power. Of course, there were people in the crowd who had mastered divine techniques. These people had powerful backgrounds, and their sects didn't lack divine techniques. However, there weren't many people who could perform a divine technique. Some people even found it difficult to perform a divine technique after becoming a martial sage. This supreme sword intent has nothing to do with your supreme sword sect anymore. At this moment, Jiang Chen put away his chasing heaven sword and stood in the air. His hair and robe danced in the wind, and he looked like a sword immortal. His eyes were clear, and he smiled at the crowd. I'm afraid those who can't perform a divine technique don't need to fight with me. To be honest, those who can't perform a divine technique don't have the right to fight with him. Many people sighed. Even Huang Jiucheng and Huang Jiucheng sighed. The two of them were powerful, but they knew their own situation. They hadn't mastered a divine technique. At this moment, there were only a few people who could fight with Jiang Chen. Then it seems like only the three of us can fight with you, Li Fengzi said softly. He took a step forward and said, the second prince of the Central Plains dynasty, Li Fengzi, a quasi-saint. Then, Ninely Prince also took a step forward. At the same time, the sound of chains breaking could be heard from his body. It was the sound of seals being unlocked. After a few breaths, Ninely Prince's cultivation had also reached secondary sage. The aura he emitted was no weaker than Li Fengzi's. Underworld Ninely Dynasty's prince, Wu Feng, secondary sage, Ninely Prince said. Then another person stepped forward, and this man was Jiang Chen's old acquaintance, Mu Xingyun, who could be called his old enemy. Burning Heaven Academy's disciple, Mu Xingyun, upper heavenly realm, Mu Xingyun said with a smile. There wasn't a trace of killing intent in his eyes and expression. The three of you aren't the only ones who can fight with him. At this moment, Zhuge Taojin walked out. He cupped his hands at Jiang Chen and said, Heaven and Earth Pavilion's third disciple, Zhuge Taojin, secondary sage. Please enlighten me. Mu Xingyun, you won't run away this time, right? Jiang Chen didn't look at the others. Instead, his gaze fell on Mu Xingyun. To Jiang Chen, Mu Xingyun was a thorn in his heart. If this person didn't die, Jiang Chen wouldn't be at ease. Hearing you say that, Mu Xingyun suddenly smiled and said, goodbye. After saying that, Mu Xingyun's figure suddenly disappeared. He turned into shadows and fled in all directions. Jiang Chen was stunned. He didn't expect that Mu Xingyun would retreat without a fight. "Don't let me catch you," Jiang Chen roared. He had nowhere to vent his anger. "I've heard that Jiang Chen has always been invincible among his peers. He can't do anything to Mu Xingyun," someone said. "An assassin with the Shadow Dao soul doesn't have any principles when doing things. He doesn't even care about his reputation. Once this kind of person grows up, the throne of the assassin world will probably change hands with him." "This is the real king of assassins," someone exclaimed. At this moment, Jiang Chen was extremely sullen. He glanced at the remaining three people and said, "What do you want?" Chapter 331. What do I want? Of course, I want your supreme sword intent, Li Fengzi said straightforwardly. A trace of killing intent flashed across the eyes of the ninely crowned prince, Wu Feng, when he heard this. He said, "If it's possible, I want your life as well. After all, with your abilities, if we wait for you to grow, you will be like a mountain on our path to becoming a true god. Moreover, it will be an unsurmountable mountain. I don't want your life or your supreme sword intent. I only want you to return to the heaven and earth pavilion with me and become its disciple," Zhuge Taojin said. Jiang Chen ignored Zhuge Taojin and Li Fengzi's words and turned to look at Wu Feng, the ninely prince. "If I'm angry, I can kill," Jiang Chen said. "You want me to die, and I want to kill too. Do you dare to fight me?" Killing, anyone would kill. However, killing was not something one could talk about. Having killing intent in one's heart and saying it out loud were two different things. Just like now, Jiang Chen did not want to kill. However, since the ninely prince said it so straightforwardly, then he would just kill him. According to the agreement, even if we kill you, the Billowing Academy cannot do anything to us. Wu Feng, the ninely prince, said, "People like you should not show off your abilities. If you know how to hide your abilities, this world is destined to be yours in the future." "It's a pity," Wu Feng said softly. Jiang Chen suddenly smiled and looked down at his hands. He seemed to be muttering to himself. After entering the Earth realm, I can finally use some powerful martial techniques. How long has it been? It's been so long that I almost forgot, Jiang Chen said softly. What a satisfying battle. I hope that today will be as I wish. Buzz! As soon as he finished speaking, rays of godly light exploded from Jiang Chen's body. The power of heaven and earth surged out from his body like a ferocious beast and wrapped around his body like red gold chains. In the next instant, without waiting for Wu Feng to make a move, Jiang Chen took a step forward. He was like a giant golden beast, and when he reached out with his palm, it was like a giant hand that covered the sky. The sky instantly darkened under the force of the palm, and the force of the earth floated up and down like a mountain. Ground suppression. Following Jiang Chen's explosive roar, his palm pierced downwards like a cloud, heading straight for Wu Feng. Wu Feng's expression froze as he felt the power radiating from the palm. He couldn't help but take a step back. During this process, Wu Feng formed a seal with his hands, and a series of extremely cryptic runes appeared. There was also an obscure aura that seemed to have come from an ancient era, and it was accompanied by an aura that made one feel reverence. Underworld continent sorcery. It is said that most people in the Underworld continent practice witchcraft, especially in the Ninely dynasty. Everyone's attainments in witchcraft are superb, Li Fengzi and the others exclaimed. They were also quite interested in this mysterious sorcery, but they were also quite fearful of it. That was because witchcraft was different from martial techniques. In comparison, witchcraft was much more powerful and mysterious. At this moment, as the runes on Wu Feng's body flashed, a sinister wind suddenly blew past, following which illusory giant beasts appeared out of thin air and charged towards Jiang Chen's palm. At the same time, many gray chains appeared out of thin air like octopuses. They locked Jiang Chen up in an instant. Witchcraft? Jiang Chen muttered softly. His body shook, and the power of heaven and earth exploded, directly shattering the chains on his body. At the same time, the force of the palm did not decrease, and it scattered all the illusions. In a short span of 3 breaths, the palm had already reached Wu Feng. "Spirit ferryman," Wu Feng shouted softly, and a drop of blood dripped from his forehead into the air, following which it turned into a rune and disappeared in a flash. The moment this rune disappeared, Jiang Qin's expression changed drastically. This was because he felt as if his soul was about to leave his body, and he could not control it. In an instant, Jiang Qin's strength dissipated, and he fell from the sky like a cripple. The palm print that seemed to cover the sky also disappeared at this moment. "Today, I will ferryman your soul, so that you will never be reincarnated." Wu Feng's voice was cold and filled with killing intent. Another drop of blood dripped from his forehead, and a few more runes appeared before disappearing. Vaguely, some people saw that these runes seemed to have turned into ferocious ghosts that lay on Jiang Qin's body and were devouring his soul. "Real witchcraft is not like this," Jiang Qin shouted angrily. "This is pure ghost witchcraft." "Ah, regardless of whether it is witchcraft or ghost witchcraft, you are dead meat," Wu Feng said disdainfully. "After being hit by the spirit ferryman, you are destined to die. I'll take your soul." "Is that so?" Jiang Qin raised his eyebrows, and a look of disdain flashed across his eyes. Then, a flame exploded in Jiang Qin's body, and the undying bird Dao, soul, rushed out from the depths of his soul. The undying bird was the most powerful divine bird in the world, and the flame on its body could burn everything that was dark. And what Wu Feng used was not witchcraft, but ghost witchcraft. Since it was ghost witchcraft, it meant that it was dark, and the flame of the undying bird Dao soul was enough to burn everything. Boom! At this moment, under the sky full of flames, the ghosts on Jiang Qin's body were all burned. Then, Jiang Qin's soul returned to its original position, and the power in his body returned. Previously, I was too weak and could only use the heavenly dance of brightness and darkness. Now, since I can use the power of the earth, then I will dance again," Jiang Qin said softly, and his body suddenly exploded with black and white colors. With the middle of his hair as the line, one side of his hair turned pitch black, and the other side turned white like the sun. 2 sharp swords, one black and one white, appeared in his hands, and a green lotus floated above his head. There was also a huge cauldron rotating beneath his feet. Real dance of heaven and earth. In the next moment, Jiang Qin's figure rushed out, leaving behind black and white afterimages. The green lotus floated above his head, the huge cauldron rotating beneath his feet, and the sharp swords in his hands. He was like a flash of light. Before anyone could react, Jiang Qin's figure had already passed through Wu Feng. So fast. What kind of martial technique is this? So powerful. Another godly martial technique? Everyone exclaimed, and even Li Fengzi and the rest were shocked. Even they could not see Jiang Qin's attack clearly. And at this moment, someone exclaimed again. That was because Wu Feng's body was breaking apart inch by inch, and he was turning into a pile of meat paste. One sword, one song, one person, and one soul. Is this all Wu Feng is capable of? Someone frowned. The Ninely Prince, one of the best in his generation, was actually killed by Jiang Qin just like that. Wasn't this a little unreasonable? Cross. And just as everyone was confused, a voice that seemed to come from a soul sounded from the pile of meat paste. Immediately after, runes exploded from Wu Feng's meat paste. There was even a netherworld river and a boat that appeared out of nowhere. An obscure and powerful force enveloped the pile of meat paste. Jiang Qin tried to attack it a few times, but he was unable to move it at all. Just like that, under everyone's shocked gazes, the boat swayed in the netherworld river, carrying Wu Feng's meat paste as if it had fallen into the cycle of reincarnation. After a few breaths, when the boat and the netherworld river disappeared, Wu Feng appeared in front of everyone, unharmed. Nine-Li Dynasty's ultimate martial technique, reincarnation crossing. Zhuge Tao exclaimed, "Legend has it that as long as one's breath is left, one can cross over to immortality. It can even bring a dead person back to life." Chapter 332. Under the Reincarnation Fairy, Wu Feng seemed to have been reborn. His essence, energy, and spirit reached their peak. Furthermore, the injuries and spiritual energy that he had lost previously had all recovered. At that moment, Wu Feng stood proudly in the air. His eyes were burning with anger, as if he wanted to skin Jiang Chun alive. "You are the first person who can use the Reincarnation Fairy more than me," Wu Feng said coldly. "Can the Reincarnation Fairy really bring a dead person back to life?" Jiang Chun asked. He did not care about Wu Feng's emotions and thoughts. Instead, he looked curious. "You dare to look down on me?" Wu Feng was furious. Jiang Chen's answer was not directed at him. It was equivalent to looking down on him. As the prince of the Nine-Li dynasty, Wu Feng had never been treated like this. However, Jiang Chen still looked curious. He blinked his eyes and stared at Wu Feng. He asked again, "I will use the Supreme Sword Essence in exchange for the Reincarnation Fairy of the Nine-Li dynasty. How about that?" The moment these words came out, everyone present couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Fighting back and forth, they were doing it for the sake of the unparalleled sword intent. But now, Jiang Chen actually wanted to exchange the Supreme Sword Essence. However, everyone knew that the Reincarnation Fairy was the ultimate skill of the Nine-Li dynasty. It was never taught to outsiders. Only the emperor and the prince could cultivate it. This was the foundation of the Nine-Li dynasty. How could it be easily exchanged? "If I defeat you, I can still obtain the Supreme Sword Essence." Wu Feng shouted angrily. "You are just an ant. Die!" Boom! When he said that, a nine-headed python appeared behind Wu Feng. Its entire body was green, and its fangs shone with a black radiance. There was even a gust of wind. "Nine-headed python, Tao spirit? This thing has appeared again?" In an instant, cries of surprise rang out from all around. Li Fengzi and the others, in particular, looked at Wu Feng with fear in their eyes. To Li Fengzi, Zhuge Taojin, and the rest, although Wu Feng was strong, he was not a threat to them. But now, when Wu Feng displayed his Tao spirit, Li Fengzi and the rest felt a tinge of pressure and even fear. After the primordial age, the nine-headed snake Tao spirit has never appeared. I didn't expect it to land on Wu Feng's body in this generation. One snake has 9 lives, 9 heads, and 9 abilities. If it wasn't for the fact that this Tao soul hasn't appeared for a long time and the world has forgotten its might, this Tao soul would be able to be ranked in the top 20 of the Tao soul rankings. Or even higher. Jiang Chun was also astonished. He hadn't expected Wu Feng's Tao soul to be a 9-headed snake. But so what? To Jiang Chun, no matter how strong his Tao soul was, he could burn everything with a single blue lamp. Of course, it was impossible for Jiang Chun to use the myriad transformations heavenly lamp in front of so many people. "Today, I will kill you," Wu Feng shouted loudly as he clenched his fists. His fists were like numerous gigantic snake heads as they pounced towards Jiang Chun. At the same time, the 9-headed snake Tao spirit charged over. Its enormous body was like a mountain, and its 9 heads spurted out a foul-smelling venom. The surrounding people had already dispersed as they didn't want to be touched by the venom. Even Li Fengzi and the rest had their spiritual energy flickering on their bodies to form a barrier to protect themselves. 9 heads? That's a lot. Jiang Chen muttered softly with a calm expression. Then he waved his hand, and a purple-gold vine rose from his back. The vine rose to the sky and took root in the ground. The vines, which were flickering with divine light, shot out as Jiang Chun waved his hand. In an instant, the vines shot out like thousands of arms and sent the 9-headed snake Tao spirit flying. There were also over 100 vines that turned into chains and bound the 9-headed snake. Roar! However, As the nine-headed snake Tao spirit roared, streaks of black venom exploded from its body and corroded the vines on its body. At the same time, Wu Feng's palm print had already landed 3 inches in front of Jiang Chun. Feeling the terrifying power coming from the palm print, Jiang Chun moved sideways. The Emperor's vines behind him intertwined to form a huge net and blocked the palm print. Before Jiang Chun could heave a sigh of relief, an obscure aura suddenly exploded from behind him. Like an invisible storm, it hit Jiang Chen's spiritual soul. Poof! At that moment, Jiang Chen's expression changed drastically. His spiritual soul was injured, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Moreover, his spiritual soul was also trembling. Sorcery is not as simple as you think. Wu Feng raised his eyebrows and licked his red lips. He said disdainfully, "Hand over the supreme sword essence and submit to me. Then I can consider sparing your life." Huh? Jiang Chen laughed disdainfully. His spiritual soul flashed, and the power of his divine body exploded. It was like clusters of flames burning all over his body. In just 3 breaths' time, Jiang Chen's injuries were completely healed. Then, black and white light flashed on Jiang Chen's body. With 2 swords in his hands, he dashed out like a flash of light. "This move again! He's too fast!" the crowd exclaimed. They could not see Jiang Chen's figure clearly. They could only see a few black and white sword radiances landing on the nine-headed snake's spiritual soul. Roar! Roar! Following a few ear-piercing roars, the nine-headed snake's body was sliced into several pieces. A few of its heads were even chopped into pieces. However, this was a spiritual soul after all. It did not have a physical body. It was formed by a type of great Tao energy. After its body was sliced into pieces, it reassembled in an instant. At the same time, it spat out a mouthful of venom. Like a wave, it pressed down on Jiang Chun. At the same time, Wu Feng reacted. His left hand formed a hand print that resembled a full moon, and his right hand formed a seal that resembled a sailboat. Then, the 2 hand prints merged, and a netherworld sea appeared. A sailboat appeared, and in the netherworld sea, a blood moon rose. Netherworld, sea, rising blood moon. Wu Feng roared. The blood moon shone brightly, and a terrifying spiritual energy engulfed Jiang Chun like a storm. For a moment, Jiang Chen's soul was shaken, and he was dazed for a moment. In just a short while, Wu Feng rushed in front of Jiang Chun. His fist was like a pitch-black millstone, and it ruthlessly smashed into Jiang Chen's head. Clang! However, this punch only caused Jiang Chun to tremble. The top of his head sounded like a huge bell being struck, but not a single crack appeared on it. This scene caused everyone's expression to change. Just how strong is his physical body? With this punch, even a quasi-sage would be beaten up, let alone a middle-level Earth Realm cultivator. "I'll return it to you." At this moment, Jiang Chun regained his senses. Feeling the intense pain from his head, he couldn't help but roar. Then, Jiang Chun punched out. It was extremely fast, and like a flash of lightning, it landed on Wu Feng's body. This punch was like a mountain crashing down. The violent energy and the power of heaven and earth directly smashed Wu Feng's body. Even Wu Feng's spiritual energy was destroyed by this punch. However, Jiang Chun didn't relax. His gaze was alert, and his body was tense. A sharp look flashed across his eyes. This was because he knew that people with the 9-headed snake spirit were born with 9 lives. Furthermore, Jiang Chun didn't know if Wu Feng could still use the reincarnation crossing technique. If he could use the reincarnation crossing technique, Wu Feng would be immortal. More than 10 breaths later, someone cried out in alarm, only to see that the 9-headed snake had lost another head. This meant that Wu Feng had been killed by Jiang Chun once again. "Very good. You're really good. How dare you slash me 3 times? You are courting death." At this moment, the sky full of sword radiance disappeared, and Wu Feng appeared in front of everyone, completely unharmed. His aura was violet, and his eyes were bloodshot. The whites of his eyes could no longer be seen. He was completely enraged. Even when he spoke, every single word he spoke was filled with violent killing intent and rage. Today, I said I'll kill you 10 times, and I'll kill you 10 times. Jiang Chen raised his brows and slashed out with chasing the heavens again. However, this time, Wu Feng's punch was not fancy at all. He did not even use a single martial technique. However, it was such a simple punch that turned the sky full of sword radiance into dust. Furthermore, the momentum of this punch did not decrease, and its speed was extremely fast. Before Jiang Chen could react, it had already landed on Jiang Chen's body. Poof! A mouthful of blood spurted out from Jiang Chen's mouth, and a bloody hole appeared in his chest. Even his organs were spurting out from the bloody hole. At this moment, Jiang Chen was stunned. He lowered his head and looked at the bloody hole in his chest. His eyes were full of disbelief. With the strength of his physical body, even an immemorial sage constitution would have to bow down in front of him. Furthermore, he had a special sage constitution. His physical body was extremely strong, like a boulder. However, Wu Feng's punch had created a bloody hole in his body. Even the power of heaven and earth that protected his body had been shattered. Do you understand that strength can break all techniques? Wu Feng said disdainfully. Although I can't wait to cut you into 1,000 pieces, I still have to thank you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have obtained such power. Strength can break all techniques? Jiang Chen's expression was serious. He did not expect the nine-headed Hydra to give Wu Feng such an ability after cutting off his second head. Strength can break all techniques. This was the ultimate and most simple power. Jiang Chen used to be like this. Strength can break all techniques. Even if you had a peerless martial technique, it would all be destroyed with one punch. However, this power was only obtained by Jiang Chen after he became a true god. Now Wu Feng was only a secondary sage, but he already had such power. This was simply unbelievable. The power given by the nine-headed Hydra cannot be used continuously. Zhuge Taojin reminded him, with his strength, he can only use it 3 times a day at most. Zhuge Taojin, just as you said, so what? I'll take his life with the next 2 punches. Wu Feng did not hide anything. After he finished speaking, he threw out 2 punches consecutively. These 2 punches were still ordinary. There was nothing fancy about them. However, the power contained within these 2 fists was so great that even the space around them was cracking. If Wu Feng was not only a secondary sage, the power of these 2 punches would be enough to shatter the void. I have no choice but to use my full strength. Jiang Chen smiled bitterly. Looking at the 2 streaks of fist radiance that were rushing towards him, his expression suddenly froze. Then, Jiang Chen slammed his palms on the ground and shouted, 99 Lo Shengmen. Boom! Boom! In an instant, a terrifying power of the earth exploded from Jiang Chen's body. At the same time, the ground shook, and huge doors rose from the ground. 99 doors stacked layer by layer, blocking in front of Jiang Chen. 99? I've heard of the Luo Shengmen before. However, most of the time, there are 6 or 9 Luo Shengmen. 99 Luo Shengmen. The group of people was dumbfounded. They had seen people use Luo Shengmen, but they had never seen someone use 99 at once. How much spiritual energy was needed to use this? How much power of the earth was needed to use this? Most people would only be able to use a dozen or so Luo Shengmen after using all their spiritual energy, right? Boom! Boom! At this moment, the 2 streaks of fist radiance were like dragons. They circled around and smashed the Luo Shengmen one after another. However, when the 2 streaks of fist radiance smashed the 97 Luo Shengmen, the fist radiance had already dissipated. At this moment, Jiang Chen rushed out from behind the Luo Shengmen. He slashed out with his chasing sky sword, and a Kuan punged sword into the sky, as if it wanted to break through the sky. Before Wu Feng could react, an explosion sounded in the sky. A huge cone formed by the sword radiance swooped down and directly crushed Wu Feng. Chapter 334. If another head of the nine-headed snake was cut off, Wu Feng could be reborn again. Furthermore, he could obtain a special power. This was the power of the nine-headed snake Dao Soul. However, before Wu Feng could be reborn, Jiang Chun waved his hand, and the undying bird rose from his back. Screech! With a long screech, the undying bird Dao Soul shot out like a flaming meteor and landed in front of the nine-headed snake. It's over. What the hell? It's a natural enemy. Everyone was dumbfounded and speechless. This was because everything in the world had karma, and everything had the Tao of mutual promotion and restraint. The Tao Soul was no exception. The nine-headed snake Tao Soul was powerful, but the undying bird Tao Soul was a natural enemy of it. The undying bird Tao Soul had the most yang flames and could burn everything that was dark in the world. The power of the nine-headed snake belonged to the dark side. Furthermore, the undying bird fed on snakes and was a natural enemy of it. No! At this moment, Wu Feng seemed to have been reborn and regained his consciousness. However, when he saw the undying bird Tao Soul, he screamed in fear. If you don't show any killing intent towards me, I can let you go today. Jiang Chun said softly. You said that I don't know how to hide my abilities and show off my abilities. However, have you ever thought that my abilities are only the light of a candle compared to your killing intent? It's so weak that it can't be compared to yours. You are the one who is showing off your abilities, Jiang Chun said. Do you know the consequences of showing off your abilities? I am the prince of the Nine-Li tribe. How dare you kill me? Wu Feng screamed hysterically, and his voice was filled with fear and a hint of threat. Jiang Chun ignored him. With a wave of his hand, the undying bird's flames exploded and engulfed the nine-headed snake. Then, the undying bird opened its flaming beak and swallowed the nine-headed snake in one gulp. Bam! The moment the nine-headed snake was swallowed, the ball of light that represented Wu Feng's rebirth collapsed. Then, the place fell silent. After several breaths of time, someone reacted and couldn't help but let out a long sigh. The Nine-Li prince died in the hands of the Wave Institute's Jiang Chun. Li Fengzi, do you want to try? At this moment, Jiang Chun turned around and looked at Li Fengzi. If my guess is correct, you are the strongest here. Not necessarily. Zhuge Taojin was not convinced. He raised his eyebrows and said, he has never fought before. How can he be qualified to be the strongest? I don't think so either. All of a sudden, a cold voice rang out near Jiang Chun's ears. In an instant, Jiang Chun's hair stood on end, and his expression changed greatly. His figure moved to the side. However, his reaction was still a beat too slow. A pitch-black light, like an endless abyss, appeared out of nowhere and pierced through Jiang Chun's forehead. This attack could be said to be a sure kill. At the same time, the crowd also saw Mu Xingyun appear beside Jiang Chun. He had a sarcastic look on his face. Smiling, he said, I'm not interested in the supreme sword spirit. The only thing I'm interested in is your life. He is really strong. His concealment technique is so superb that we didn't notice it. Even Jiang Chun didn't notice it. This person is not only strong but also patient, Li Fengzi and the others exclaimed. They were afraid of Mu Xingyun. At this moment, Jiang Chun was petrified. The space between his eyebrows had been pierced through, and the pitch-black light had pierced his holy soul directly. There was also a sealing force that wanted to seal Jiang Chun's divine soul, and even his soul. You have to understand that I am a dark master and assassin. How can I fight with you openly? Mu Xingyun said, sneak attacks are shameful. But for an assassin, to be able to kill a person is a symbol of glory and strength. Jiang Chun stood in place and did not speak. He operated the power of his whole body and was refining the sealing force on his divine soul. At the same time, Jiang Chun also agreed with Mu Xingyun's words. Mu Xingyun was a dark master. How could he fight with him openly? Now that Mu Xingyun's sneak attack was successful, Jiang Chen could only sigh at his carelessness. I always thought that you had really retreated, so I said that Li Fengzi was the strongest here. After a few breaths, the sealing force on Jiang Chen's divine soul was refined. Only then did he open his mouth and said with a solemn expression, I, Jiang Chen, admit that you are very strong. I don't need anyone to admit me. Mu Xingyan chuckled and said, just now, I had plenty of opportunities to continue attacking you, but I didn't. It's because I want to let these top geniuses know one thing. Among the people of the same generation on the godless continent, you are not the strongest. Mu Xingyan raised his eyebrows and said, as long as I am still alive, you will have enemies. You weren't confident that you could kill me just now. Jiang Chen curled his lips and said, if you were confident, why didn't you make a move? Heh. Mu Xingyan sneered and did not speak. He agreed with Jiang Chen's words. It was because he knew that Jiang Chen was very strong. Even if Jiang Chen's glabella was pierced and his divine soul was sealed, Mu Xingyan did not dare to be careless. This time, I really have to leave, Mu Xingyan whispered. He looked at Jiang Chen and said, the matter between you and me will not end here. One day, your life will fall into my hands. After saying that, Mu Xingyan no longer paid attention to the injured Jiang Chen. His figure disappeared. This time, Jiang Chen was very vigilant. He observed for a long time. After confirming that Mu Xingyan had really left, he sat down cross-legged and planned to heal his injuries. I'm injured, so I won't fight today, Jiang Chen said. I don't want to bully an injured person. I'll wait until your injuries are healed. Then I'll fight you again, Li Fengzi said. Zhuge Tao also nodded. Everyone had their own pride. With his and Li Fengzi's strength, and in front of so many people, it was naturally impossible to force Jiang Chen to fight again. At this moment, Jiang Chen was sitting cross-legged in front of so many people, healing his injuries and regulating his breathing. At the same time, he was also puzzled as to why Mu Xingyan had suddenly left. In Jiang Chen's heart, Mu Xingyan had absolute strength and could compete with him. However, looking at Mu Xingyan's appearance before, he seemed to have left in a hurry. People from the Burning Heaven Academy? Why are they here? After more than 10 breaths, just as Jiang Chen was puzzled, a group of elders from the Burning Heaven Academy, and even the vice principal and principal arrived one after another. The group of people's faces were very ugly. After arriving here, their gazes swept around as if they were looking for something. Have you seen my Burning Heaven Academy's disciple, Mu Xingyan? After a few breaths, an elder from the Burning Heaven Academy asked. His voice was cold and filled with anger. He's gone, someone replied. Damn it, chase after him. No matter if he's dead or alive, bring him back to the Burning Heaven Academy. The principal of the Burning Heaven Academy was furious. He ignored his status and roared in front of these juniors. Chapter 335. Mu Xingyun suddenly left, but the people from the Burning Heaven Academy arrived. If nothing happened in between, no one would believe it. Looking at the appearance of the Burning Heaven Academy's dean again, everyone was clear in their hearts that Mu Xingyan must have caused big trouble in the Burning Heaven Academy. The people from the Burning Heaven Academy did not stay here for long. After asking some questions, they directly left. Jiang Chen was extremely puzzled. Just what did Mu Xingyan do in the Burning Heaven Academy to actually make a group of the Burning Heaven Academy's upper echelons personally take action? The dean was even furious on the spot. Something big happened. The Burning Heaven Academy's Burning Heaven Heart Sutra was stolen by someone. Half a day later, when Jiang Chen was still recuperating, a piece of news spread into the Billow Academy and quickly swept through the entire barren state. All because the Burning Heaven Heart Sutra was the Burning Heaven Academy's supreme cultivation method, the legacy of the former Burning Heaven Emperor. Since the Burning Heaven Academy was established until now, being able to keep a foothold in the godless continent without collapsing, the most crucial thing was this Burning Heaven Heart Sutra. Now, the Burning Heaven Heart Sutra was stolen, and the Burning Heaven Academy was not around at all. This had a huge impact on the future. Mu Xingyun stole the Burning Heaven Heart Sutra? Jiang Chun said softly, and also felt relieved in his heart. If not for this, why would the Burning Heaven Academy need to go to war to come and find Mu Xingyun? But what Jiang Chun could not figure out was that with Mu Xingyun's talent and aptitude, as long as he stayed in the Burning Heaven Academy to cultivate properly, the Burning Heaven Academy would definitely nurture him well. At that time, receiving the true inheritance and even obtaining the Burning Heaven Heart Sutra was also nothing difficult. Then, since that was the case, why did Mu Xingyun want to steal the Burning Heaven Heart Sutra? Could it be that there was still some secret involved? Pass down the order, secretly find Mu Xingyun, and bring him back to the Central State Dynasty at all costs. Li Fengzi secretly transmitted his voice, a trace of light flashing across his eyes. At the same time, the various geniuses also transmitted back, reporting this matter to the ears of the upper echelons of their respective sects and forces. For a moment, not only the Barren State, the people of the other 6 states were all moved. Facing the Heaven-Burning Heart Sutra, no one could remain calm. Everyone would be moved. In the past, the Burning Heaven Heart Sutra was in the hands of the Burning Heaven Academy. It was naturally not good for the various major sects and forces to snatch it. But now, the Burning Heaven Heart Sutra had been brought out of the Burning Heaven Academy. If the various sects and forces could find Mu Xingyun before the Burning Heaven Academy and secretly obtain the Burning Heaven Heart Sutra from Mu Xingyun, then what could the Burning Heaven Academy do? The inheritance of the Burning Heaven Emperor is of great importance. Zhuge Tao let out a long sigh. Then he looked deeply at Jiang Chun and said, I'm going back to the Heaven and Earth Pavilion. If there's a chance in the future, I'll fight with you again. Clearly, the upper echelons of the Heaven and Earth Pavilion had also made a move and summoned all the disciples. It was most likely because of Mu Xingyun and the Heaven-Burning Heart Sutra. Moreover, after Zhuge Tao left, the other geniuses also left one after another. Only Li Fengzi and his group remained. You 2 brothers aren't leaving? After half an incense stick's worth of time, Jiang Chun stood up, his injuries completely healed. There was a trace of a smile on his face. When the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, he gave off an unruly feeling. If I don't fight with you, why should I leave? Li Fengzi said, It seems that the Central State Dynasty is determined to obtain the supreme sword intent in my hands. Jiang Chun raised his eyebrows, then smiled and said, Actually, if you want the supreme sword intent, as long as you tell me properly, I can give it to you. The reason why I don't want to give it to you is because your attitude is wrong. When these words came out, Li Fengzi and Li Fengyuan were stunned for a moment. They were a little confused. The various sects and forces had spent a lot of effort to make an agreement with the Billow Academy. After many twists and turns, they came here to fight with Jiang Chun, wanting to obtain the supreme sword intent. And Jiang Chun had always been resisting, unwilling to hand over the supreme sword intent. But now, they were a little dumbfounded. He was unwilling to hand over the supreme sword intent just because their attitude was wrong? Then if their attitude was better, would Jiang Chun really give the supreme sword intent to them? Do you think we are fools? Li Fengyuan shouted angrily. If you were willing to hand it over, we wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. Have you ever been nice to me since the beginning? Jiang Chun said sarcastically. In my eyes, all inheritances are just so. They're dispensable. As long as you talk nicely, how can I not give you the supreme sword intent? After saying that, Jiang Chun narrowed his eyes slightly, looked at Li Fengzi, and said mockingly, What do you say? Let's fight first. Li Fengzi raised his head. You are very strong. In the previous battle, I was weaker than you in the same realm, but today, I will use all my strength. And then? Jiang Chun asked, If you lose, I won't give you the supreme sword intent. From what you said just now, I knew that you would give me the supreme sword intent. Li Fengzi suddenly smiled. No one is a fool. I know what you meant. You understood, but there is someone who didn't. Isn't the one beside you a fool? Jiang Chun said with a smile. Li Fengyuan's face turned ugly when he heard that. However, he really didn't understand what Jiang Chun had meant by what he had said. "Let's go somewhere else to fight," Li Fengzi said, then soared into the sky and flew towards the back mountain of the Wave Institute. Only the elders and the dean lived in the back mountain of the Wave Institute. Usually, no one was allowed to enter this place. However, as far as Jiang Chun was concerned, he could go anywhere in the Billowing Wave Institute. As for Li Fengzi, as the second prince of the Central Plains dynasty, if he wanted to go to the back mountain, the Wave Institute wouldn't stop him. After all, they still had to give face to the Central Plains dynasty. After a few breaths, when the two of them entered the back mountain, their auras had reached the peak. Li Fengzi stood proudly in the sky. His quasi-sage aura was like a rainbow, soaring into the sky. The layers of clouds began to crumble under this aura, and a strange phenomenon appeared. It was as if a golden lotus was rotating in the air. Jiang Chen's blood qi was overflowing, and when he opened his eyes, it seemed like the sun and moon were floating. Behind him, the Emperor's vine and the undying bird Dao soul appeared together. The purple gold and crimson radiance illuminated the area around him. The undying bird landed on the Emperor's vine, like a phoenix perching on a parasol tree. A series of loud cries shook the heavens and echoed across the clouds. "Do you think it's fair for me to fight with you as a quasi-sage?" Li Fengzi suddenly asked. "Fair? Is there anything fair in this world?" Jiang Chen asked back. "No." Li Fengzi shook his head. "Some people are born to be kings, some become bandits, some live mediocre lives, and some have glory from birth. There's no such thing as fairness in this world. And in the world of cultivators, the word fairness is a joke. The only fairness is strength." Jiang Chen raised his eyebrows. "With enough strength, fairness is nothing." "Yes." Li Fengzi nodded. Boom, boom. The moment he finished speaking, the two of them looked at each other and charged out at almost the same time. Chapter 336. One of them held the dragon scale armor and the dragon scale reverse sword. His dragon aura was vast and mighty, and the dragon's aura turned into an invisible spiritual storm that rushed toward Jiang Chun. Jiang Chen's body was surrounded by sword intent, and there was a flash of light between his eyebrows. That was his violent spiritual power. Boom! In the next moment, the two of them collided. With a loud explosion, Jiang Chen slashed out with the chasing the heavens power in his hand, and the dragon scale armor vibrated with the sound of a bell being rung. At the same time, Li Fengzi slashed with the dragon scale reverse sword in his hand, and it could be said that it landed squarely on Jiang Chen's body. However, Jiang Chen's physical body was extremely strong, and the power of heaven and earth had turned into a battle suit. With the strength of his physical body, he took the sword head-on and was unharmed. "This physical body," Li Fengzi exclaimed, but his hands did not stop moving. He placed the dragon scale armor in front of him, and the dragon scale reverse sword in his hand shot out like a spear, forcing Jiang Chun to retreat more than 10 feet. Without waiting for Jiang Chun to get close, Li Fengzi formed a seal with both hands. A rune that looked like a mountain flashed, and a majestic force of mountains and rivers erupted. Hanzon seal, accompanied by a roar, the rune flashed with boundless light, and it was like a mountain falling from the sky. "What the F*** CK? You even know the Hanzon seal?" Jiang Chen cursed. He pointed, chasing the heavens at the sky, and all the strength in his body gathered at the tip of the sword. "Of the 9 seals in the world, my Zhongzhou dynasty has 3. Li Fengzi raised his eyebrows. "No matter how strong your physical body is, it will be suppressed by the Hanzon seal. Sword cleaves the firmament." Jiang Chun ignored Li Fengzi. He looked serious. After rotating his body, he chased after the sky and attacked it. Boom! In an instant, a boundless sword light erupted. It was like a true dragon had charged out from the sky chaser and collided with the descending mountain seal. Amidst a series of explosions, The sword rays intertwined like a large net, but it was incomparably sharp. In a few breaths, it actually cut the Han seal into nothingness. What? Li Feng's expression changed. The rippling mountain seal was one of the 9 seals under the heavens. It gathered the power of mountains and rivers, and could suppress everything. Moreover, it was so heavy that ordinary attacks would not be able to break through it. You have the Han seal, and I have the supreme sword intent, Jiang Chun said in a serious tone. The previous sword attack had originated from the supreme sword intent. The supreme sword intent had no moves or styles. It all depended on one's own comprehension. Whatever he could comprehend from it, that was what it was. Sky-flipping seal. Without waiting for Jiang Chun to rush over, Li Feng's hands formed seals once more. In an instant, the power of heaven and earth erupted, and a palm flipped down from the sky. Can we talk nicely? Jiang Chun was stunned for a moment, and he felt guilty. The 9 seals under the heavens. Each seal was extremely powerful. Among them, the overturning sky seal was the most powerful. According to legend, as long as one's strength was enough, even the sky could be overturned under the sky-flipping seal. I've always been good when I speak. Li Fengzi was stunned for a moment. He did not expect Jiang Chun to be able to show such a cute side in such an intense battle. Therefore, Li Fengzi's heart suddenly relaxed. However, in the next moment, Li Fengzi also cursed and shouted, F***CKU. This was because Jiang Chun had summoned 18 clones in succession, and each of them held chasing heaven in their hands. Following that, 36 sword rays rushed up and slashed the sky-flipping seal into nothingness. Sword incarnation? Where did you get such a lost martial technique? Li Fengzi's eyes narrowed. I picked it up. Jiang Chun chuckled. His figure moved horizontally, and he used shrinking earth to an inch. With one step, it was as if he had crossed time and space. In an instant, he appeared in front of Li Fengzi. Boom! In the next moment, Jiang Chun threw out 3 punches in succession. One punch shook off the dragon scale reverse sword. One punch shook off the dragon scale shield. The last punch landed directly in front of Li Fengzi. Poof! With a muffled sound, Li Fengzi's entire face was crooked. He spat out blood and a few bloody teeth. The bridge of his nose was also tempered. It could be said that his entire face had collapsed. However, Li Fengzi was not seriously injured. He was a quasi-sage. Although he had yet to become a sage, his sage body was not weaker than Jiang Chun's. There's no one here, Li Fengzi said to himself. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Then he cursed, Are you King looking for death? You want to slap my face? Second prince, please pay attention to your status, image, and demeanor. Jiang Chun mocked. At the same time, he rubbed his palm. He secretly thought that Li Fengzi's skin was really thick. Even his palm was slightly painful from the slap. If it weren't for the imperial family's reputation, would I be like this? Li Fengzi looked like a ruffian and said, If the eldest prince doesn't come out, everything outside will be managed by me. Of course, I have to be good on the surface. However, there are no outsiders here now. Why should I pretend? Li Fengzi spat a mouthful of saliva. His body emitted a golden light, and the shadow of a real dragon appeared behind him. In an instant, the shadow of the real dragon solidified and then split. Finally, it landed on Li Fengzi's body and turned into a battle armor. 3 Dao spirits. Jiang Chun widened his eyes in surprise. After his rebirth, Jiang Chun thought that he was already the best with 3 Dao spirits. However, it seemed that there was always someone better in this world. Li Fengzi, who had the twin Dao spirits, the dragon scale reverse sword, and the dragon scale armor, had summoned another Dao spirit. And this Dao spirit was still a dragon Dao spirit. Dragon shield, dragon sword, and dragon armor. I have all 3. Li Fengzi no longer spoke with a demeanor. He was more like a scoundrel in the marketplace. It's a pity that the position of the emperor of the Zhou dynasty will not be yours in the future, Jiangchen mocked. Hearing this, Li Fengzi's face darkened. This was because the position of the emperor of the Zhou dynasty had always belonged to the first prince since ancient times. As the second prince, no matter how outstanding he was destined to have no fate with the position of the emperor in the future. This was also the pain in his heart. I'll kill you. Li Fengzi was furious. Wearing the dragon armor, holding the dragon sword and dragon shield, he charged toward Jiangchen. It's been a long time since I had a good fight. Today, I'll accompany you. Jiangchen did not use any other means. The two of them were like martial artists. After they collided, they fought with their physical bodies. After half a day, Jiangchen was sweating profusely. Even with the existence of the heavenly star, the power of heaven and earth would not be exhausted. However, the power of heaven and earth in his body could not be connected. On the other side, Li Fengzi used the dragon sword as a crutch and stood in the air. He was shouting and his legs were trembling. He did not have the heavenly star and had relied on his own realm to hold on until now. Until now, Jiangchen had not lost, and he, Li Fengzi, had not lost either. However, Li Fengzi's strength had been consumed by more than half and was almost exhausted. Are you a human or a ghost? As a second sage, I'm tired from fighting. How can you still move? Li Fengzi squinted. Did you eat pills? I'm poor. I can't afford pills. Jiangchen mocked. Do you still want to fight? Although I can't win against you, you can't win against me either. The last blow. Li Fengzi's expression suddenly froze. He did not want to lose to Jiangchen, and he did not want to end in a draw. After all, he was a second sage and Jiangchen was only at the Middle Earth realm. His realm was so much higher than Jiangchen's. If he still could not defeat Jiangchen, Li Fengzi felt that he had lost all face. Chapter 337. Li Fengzi put away his ruffian look. His eyebrows were raised, and stars seemed to be floating in his eyes. He formed hand seals and chanted an ancient scripture. It was as if he was chanting an incantation. Buzz! After a few breaths, the dragon sword, dragon armor, and dragon shield floated in front of him and quickly disintegrated. After another 3 breaths, a dazzling light exploded in front of him, and the 3 Tao souls merged together. Upon closer inspection, it was a golden sky halberd. It was golden in color and had dragon patterns on its surface. At the bottom of the sky halberd, there was a lifelike dragon's head. A terrifying dragon's aura spread out from the sky halberd, and one could vaguely hear a dragon's roar. Li Fengzi did not move. He stood in place, and divine light rose from his body. His eyes were deep as he stared at the sky halberd in front of him. He suddenly shouted, "Condense!" The moment his voice fell, an illusory figure was formed. Its appearance could not be seen clearly, but the golden divine light spread out. The illusory figure was like a real thing. It stretched out one hand and held the sky halberd in its hand. Then, a shield with a dragon's head carved on it suddenly appeared and fell into the illusory figure's other hand. Soul into soul, body into body. This move is called soul-snatching single. Li Fengzi spoke in a low voice. He waved his hand, and the shadow, holding the sky piercer, dashed toward Jiangchen with the power of wind and thunder. Surrounded by the mighty breath of the dragon, it dashed toward Jiangchen. Jiangchen narrowed his eyes. He knew that this move was Li Fengzi's strongest move, and he did not dare to be careless. Therefore, when Li Fengzi used soul-snatching single, Jiangchen had already made his move. The heavenly star in his body was burning, and the mighty power of heaven and earth gushed out like a tide and swept across his body. The brilliance of the sun and moon floated in his eyes, the undying bird above his head, and the emperor's vine behind him towered into the sky. In his hand, chasing heaven was clenched, and the sword radiance was swallowing. Desolation. The next moment, Jiangchen let out a long roar, and his hair fluttered. Upon closer inspection, Each strand of hair was like a sharp sword. Moreover, an extremely terrifying sword in tin erupted from his body. Is this the inheritance of the desolate god, the supreme sword will? Li Fengzi exclaimed. That's right, Jiang Chen whispered as he slashed out with chasing heaven. Boom! In an instant, a sword light that seemed to pierce through the sky exploded, illuminating the entire back mountain. More than a dozen nearby mountains were reduced to dust by this sword light. The mountains and rivers disintegrated one after another like paper. After the origami, someone else has mastered Baron. At a certain place in the back mountains, the blue sky Confucian scholar raised his head to look at the nearby sword light, a hint of joy and excitement in his eyes. Behind him, Qin Kong's expression was ugly. The other elders were also wiping the cold sweat off their foreheads. This was all because Jiang Chen's sword could be said to have destroyed half of the back mountain. Ancestor, aren't you going to stop it? Qin Kong first smiled bitterly. If this sword really slashes down, I'm afraid Li Fengzi will die. If Li Fengzi dies, this back mountain will also be destroyed. Another elder had a strange expression. This back mountain is the foundation of the Billowing Waves Academy. If it's destroyed, then so be it. The blue sky Confucian scholar curled his lips as he thought to himself. If he's going to die, what's the point of having this Billowing Waves Academy? Boom! At this moment, the sword light finally fell, slashing the shadow into nothingness. The dragon sword, dragon armor, and dragon shield were also jolted back into Li Fengzi's body. In an instant, Li Fengzi's face turned pale as his pupils contracted. Looking at the sword light that was rapidly slashing down, he finally felt the taste of death. However, he smiled, because he knew that Jiang Chen was not that kind of person. In this battle, Jiang Chen would not kill him. Moreover, Li Fengzi, would not lose this battle. I said it's a draw, but you didn't believe me. Seeing that the sword light was about to slash Li Fengzi's body, Jiang Chen muttered weakly. Then his entire body fell from the sky. The power of heaven and earth in his body, under the condition that he had the heavenly star, had actually dried up. As for the sword light, without the support of Jiang Chen's power of heaven and earth, it also dissipated. In the end, it did not slash Li Fengzi's body. You can't slash this sword, so I won't die. Li Fengzi stood in place with a smile, but that smile was a little sad. Yes, Li Fengzi had not lost. However, he had not won. A quasi-saint was unable to defeat a cultivator in the middle of the earth realm. Although he had not lost, he had still lost. Say it, what do you want? After a few breaths, Li Fengzi's expression returned to normal. He looked as steady and calm as before, with the demeanor of a king. He stared at Jiang Chen, who was lying on the ground, and said, "Just say what you want, as long as I can give it. I only want a promise from you." Jiang Chen was lying on the ground. The power in his body was slowly recovering, but he did not even want to move a finger. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Li Fengzi, who was standing in the air, and said, "In the future, if I am in a life-and-death situation and no one can save me, the Central Continent dynasty must stand up. That's all?" Li Fengzi was stunned, as if he was surprised. This was because in Li Fengzi's heart, as long as the Central Continent dynasty acted, there were not many things in the world that could not be settled. And such a promise was too simple for Li Fengzi. You think it's very simple? Do you know who my enemy is? Jiang Chen said mockingly. How about it? Do you agree? Yes. Li Fengzi nodded. Then he threw a token with 7 dragons engraved on it in front of Jiang Chen and said, "If such a day really comes, crush it. The Central Continent dynasty will definitely stand up and support you." That's enough. Jiang Chen smiled and accepted the 7 dragons token. Then he formed a seal with both hands, condensing the supreme sword intent into a rune, and sent it in front of Li Fengzi. Be careful. Don't try to comprehend it casually. If you are not careful, you will die, Jiang Chen reminded him. I know, Li Fengzi said softly. Then he turned around and walked away. However, after a few steps, he stopped again. After a moment of silence, he said seriously, "People will continue to become stronger. There will be a day when I will not be below you." I also believe that. Jiangchen nodded and said, "If we meet again in the future, I can give you some pointers." Li Fengzhou was stunned for a moment. He cursed in his heart, "Little brat, do I need your pointers?" Thinking about it, Li Fengzhou did not say anything else. With the supreme sword intent, he brought Li Fengyuan and left the Billowing Wave Academy. Ancestor? Ancestor? What happened to you? Not long after Li Fengzhou and the others left the Billowing Wave Academy, and before Jiangchen could even get up from the ground, somewhere in the back mountain, the expressions of Qin Kong, Yi, and the others changed greatly. There were even a few exclamations in succession. At the same time, the Billowing Wave Academy appeared. It lifted Jiangchen and brought him in front of Qin Kong Yi and said in a deep voice, "Take one last look at him." Chapter 338. In front of a thatched hut at the back of the mountain, the upper echelons of the Billowing Waves Institute were gathered with solemn expressions. Some of them had sorrow in their eyes, while others were calm, but there was a trace of excitement in the depths of their eyes. Outside the thatched hut, more than 30 people were kneeling side by side. They were all wearing the same robes, and they were all descendants of the Qin Kong clan. Inside the thatched hut, Qin Kong Confucian scholar was lying on a shabby wooden bed. His face was devoid of blood, and his life aura was extremely weak. Qin Kong Yishur stood at the side, tears rolling in his old eyes. On the other side, Qin Kong Xianyue was kneeling in front of the window, tears in her eyes, and her expression sorrowful. At this moment, Jiangchen and Bolan arrived. The two of them, one in front and one behind, stood by the wooden bed in silence. Outside the desolate god's training ground, although the old ancestor returned safely, his injuries are not light. Qin Kong Yishur sighed. Coupled with the previous hidden injuries, the old ancestor will not be able to survive. If not for you, how could the old ancestor fall like this? Qin Kong Xianyue suddenly looked at Jiangchen, glaring at him, and shouted angrily, "What use are you? I don't understand why the old ancestor is so good to you. He did not hesitate to use his life to fight for a future for you. What's so good about me?" Jiangchen heard this and whispered, as if he was asking himself. He thought of himself when he was in the Nine Firmaments divine world. At that time, he had many followers by his side. However, when he became a divine king, how many of those people who had fought alongside him were left in the end? And after he fell, how many of those who were still in the Nine Firmaments divine world had survived? It seems like I'm really useless. The people around me are leaving one after another, and I can't do anything about it. After a long time, Jiangchen sighed, "What should I do, live?" At this moment, the unconscious Qin Kong Confucian scholar suddenly opened his eyes. His voice was weak, and his eyes were muddy. However, he stared at Jiangchen and forced a smile, saying, "I put everything on you. This is my choice. And the choice I, Qin Kong Confucian scholar, make is definitely not wrong. It's a pity that before you can succeed, I will die first. I won't be able to wait for you." The blue sky Confucian scholar narrowed his eyes, and his chest heaved. He knew his situation. If he closed his eyes, he would never be able to open them again. He was unwilling to accept this. If he had met Jiangchen earlier, he wouldn't have ended up like this. In the blue sky Confucian scholar's heart, perhaps this was his fate. "You can still be saved," Jiangchen said softly, but he didn't dare to be sure. He only said, "I'll take you away from here." His lifespan has dried up, and he has secretly injured his family. He has even injured his 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls. How are you going to save him? Bolan said in a low voice, "I know you are extraordinary and have many secrets. However, even if a god were to descend to the mortal world, it would still be difficult to save his life. I want a piece of eternal azure gold." Jiangchen's expression suddenly turned serious, and he said, "Everyone retreat." "What do you mean?" The ancestor is about to die. Don't joke around. Around them, the people of the Blue Sky clan shouted angrily, clearly not believing Jiang Chen's words. After all, in their eyes, Jiang Chen was just a brat. His cultivation was low, and he was young. How many people would believe what he said? Everyone, retreat. Suddenly, the Blue Sky Confucian scholar seemed to have a final burst of strength as he struggled to sit up on the bed. The turbidity in his eyes dissipated, and a bright light appeared. As if he used his last bit of strength, he shouted, "This old man doesn't want to die." "Dean, what do you think?" Jiang Chen looked at Bolan and said, "It can't be that the huge Bolan Academy doesn't even have a piece of eternal azure gold, right?" "Yes, I'll go get it for you now." Bolan nodded, then waved his hand and said, "Everyone leave." As his voice fell, Blue Sky won, and the others hesitated for a while before walking out of the bamboo house in the end. At this moment, only Jiang Chun and the Blue Sky Confucian scholar were left in the bamboo house. Outside of the desolate God Dao rite, everyone knows that I have obtained the supreme sword intent and want to kill me to seize the inheritance. Jiang Chun said, "I know that if it weren't for you at that time, I would definitely have died." Hearing this, the Blue Sky Confucian scholar didn't say anything, but fell straight back on the bed. He didn't even have the strength to speak. "Do you believe in this day? Do you believe in this life?" Jiang Chen continued, not caring if the Blue Sky Confucian scholar could hear or understand. "You know my identity. I am Tian Chun." Jiang Chun said softly, "There is something that I wanted to leave for myself, but I, Jiang Chun, am not an ungrateful person. Today, I cut off my own path to continue your future. In the future, if you reach the top, you must forget." After saying this, Jiang Chun pressed his palm on the top of his head. It was as if an invisible hand had reached into his soul. Then, with a flash of light, a mark hidden in the depths of his soul was taken out by him. During this process, Jiang Chun also thought that if he lost this mark, his future path was equivalent to a dead end. However, if he didn't do this, the Blue Sky Confucian scholar would undoubtedly die. The heart of the ninth firmament, the throne of the Divine King. I use the Divine King's Godhead to continue your life. From today onwards, there is no Tian Chun in this world. Only you, the Confucian scholar. In the next moment, Jiang Chen's face was deathly pale. The mark that was taken out from the depths of his soul was his Godhead. Divine King's Godhead. This was Jiang Chen's final trump card, and also his strongest trump card after returning to the ninth firmament divine world in the future. With this Divine King's Godhead, if Jiang Chen ascended to the divine world, he could immediately become a god and recover to his strongest state. And now, Jiang Chun had given away this most important thing. However, once a Divine King's Godhead changed owners, it would dissipate. Giving the Godhead to the Blue Sky Confucian scholar didn't mean that he could become a Divine King. Instead, he used the power within the Godhead to temporarily extend the Blue Sky Confucian scholar's life. A Divine King's Godhead defied the heavens and changed fate, but only to extend the Blue Sky Confucian scholar's life for 3 months. 3 months to break the Godhead and cut off Jiang Chen's future path. But Jiang Chun had no regrets. "I'll give it to you." At this moment, Jiang Chen shouted. The Divine King's Godhead in his hand shattered, turning into wisps of divine light that sank into the Blue Sky Confucian scholar's body. Several breaths later, the Divine King's Godhead completely disappeared, but the Blue Sky Confucian scholar didn't wake up. However, his life force recovered a little, allowing him to live for another 3 months. And in these 3 months, if he couldn't find a way to extend the Blue Sky Confucian scholar's life, it would be equivalent to giving the Godhead for nothing, and the Blue Sky Confucian scholar would still die. Why did the sky change? Look, the sky is full of brilliant suns. The sky is full of stars. At the same time, outside the bamboo house, everyone saw a shocking scene. In the clear sky, brilliant suns suddenly appeared one after another, and even stars appeared together with them. No one knew that this was because after the divine king's godhead shattered, the gods of the nine firmaments' divine world sensed it. Then, from now on, the nine firmaments' divine world would erupt into a storm, and all the gods would have hope of becoming the divine king. And those balls of light that seemed like brilliant suns and stars were the power of those gods. They were going to make their move. They were going to start the expedition. They were going to stir up the entire nine firmaments, just to become the divine king. Gods of the nine firmaments, if I don't bestow this divine king's godhead to others, you will always be at my feet. Jiangchen said softly. Suddenly, he smiled faintly and said, "Fine, I'll give you all a chance. Even if someone becomes the divine king, there will come a day when I return. That divine king's position will definitely be taken back by me personally." Tianchun, what's wrong with you? The divine king's godhead shattered? What exactly happened to you on the godless continent? Can we still wait for you to come back? In the nine firmaments' divine world, those gods who had once followed Jiang Chun also noticed this matter. They were worried about Jiang Chun, and there were even some who looked sorrowful, mistakenly thinking that Jiang Chun was completely dead. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.